This boy went through this every single day. Maru, a simple butcher, spent his days cutting pork. But this guy, he has a legendary ability. His eyes turn red and he starts cutting everything in the blink of an eye. Before awakening, his life was ordinary. He worked at a butcher shop that specialized in pork. One day, something changed. His boss wasn't happy at all with the idea that Maru might be better than him. The muscular man tried to intimidate him, asking if Maru really thought he could take his place as the butcher with only 5 years of experience. The boss slammed his cleaver against the wall behind Maru, thinking it would scare him. But Maru didn't care. His boss always showed up to crack jokes and flex his muscles anyway. Turns out the manager was just showing off a piece of meat, proud of his own skill. Beside him, our Chad Maru simply nodded and kept working. He cut with precision, his knife sliding perfectly with every stroke. The boss hugs him from behind, praising his technique, but Maru tells him to stop getting in the way. Ignoring the request, the manager turns and yells for someone named Kim Yang. He calls her again, but she seems to be asleep at her desk. Then he screams her name with all his might, making the girl jump up. The accountant, Kim Yang, with her mouth full, questions what this fieldwork is. She waves goodbye and asks them to bring back something tasty. The boss grabs Maru again and asks if he knows how much he cares. Maru reflects that this care means terrible pay, overtime, and no days off. With a passionate expression, the manager says it's all his love for him. He then asks if Maru remembers the test he gave him on his first day to slaughter a pig. The manager recalls promising to pay Maru if he could take down a pig, a task most people would hesitate to do. Just the thought of taking the animal's life would be a huge obstacle. But Maru showed no hesitation and carried out the order without even blinking. In that exact moment, the manager knew one thing. He throws a bucket of water over his own head and declares that Maru was born to be a butcher. Maru complains about being dragged there in the middle of his shift. And to make matters worse, he realizes the boss wants him to scrub his back. The manager tells him to use the strength he used in school fights, but Maru refuses to work without pay. As Maru scrubs his back, the boss understands that he really needs money. Maru confirms with a serious look that he needs a lot of money. The boss then offers a job that might not fix his house but could pull him out of the cycle of poverty. Maru accepts immediately and asks what he needs to do, and the manager wants to know if he really studied in Japan. With a wide, bright smile, the boss says that's enough and tells him to get ready for the trip. Their destination is revealed as a plane crosses the sky towards Japan. A short time later, Mara gets off the plane and waits at a bus stop in rural Japan. Alone at the bus stop, he realizes he's been left behind. His expression changes to pure shock and disbelief. He understands the plane has already left, abandoning him in Japan. 6 months have passed since that day. Maru was sent there at the request of a Japanese company that needed an urgent supply of meat. Working without a single day off, he wonders why he's doing this in another country. Besides the exhaustion, he notices that something about the workplace is very strange. Despite the alleged staff shortage, he's the only butcher, and a sinister man watches him all the time. When Maru tries to tell the man he can't smoke there, he's met with ridicule. But the most suspicious thing of all is the work itself. The company only wants the ribs perfectly separated, discarding all other parts of the meat. He holds one of the ribs and notices it feels strangely heavier than normal. Squeezing it, he's certain that something is hidden inside. His butcher's eyes spot a thin cut line and a white powder leaking from the crack. He finally understands that this is a job no Japanese butcher would take, which is why the Yakuza are watching him so closely. He stares at the rib in his hand, suspicious of the white powder leaking from it. However, he decides to focus on the job, thinking he'll be going home soon anyway. Immediately, he changes his mind and wonders if he shouldn't just leave right now. The scene cuts to the office in South Korea where his boss answers the phone surprised. In a phone booth, Maru yells that he can't stand another 6 months of night shifts and Yakuza surveillance. The boss yells back, questioning why he's acting like this now. After so long, Maru retorts that it's not sudden, that there's something very wrong with that place. The manager reminds him of his family's debts and how he begged for this opportunity. He presses him, asking if Maru thought making money was easy, but promises to sort everything out in a month. Maru grits his teeth and agrees to the deadline, having no other choice. Hanging up the phone, he punches the wall in the booth, frustrated about being trapped because of money. With an angry glare, he curses the hellhole he's in. Back at work, he slams his knife into the meat. He takes out his anger on the task, telling himself he just has to endure for 1 more month. Just then, a voice calls him in Japanese, and he turns with a weary expression. The Yakuza guard approaches with a disturbing smile and asks if the work is going well. Then he touches Maru's face with the same hand he used to adjust himself, making Maru decide that this is the guy's end. The man continues saying he's tempted to recruit him, which pushes Maru to his absolute limit. However, he sees a gun tucked into the man's waistband and forces himself to keep his composure. Maru changes the subject and the guard explains he's leaving early and that the rookie will take his place. At that moment, someone's footsteps approach and the guard announces the rookie's arrival. A huge tattooed man appears and Maru is shocked to learn they're the same age. The guard introduces Marv and orders the rookie to take the ribs to the designated spot. Holding a bowl, the rookie asks where exactly the designated spot is. The boss gets annoyed with the question and tells him to use his head and just leave them in any corner. Suddenly, the meat hooks on the ceiling begin to swing violently. Mario looks up, confused and scared by the unexpected tremor. Then, the entire warehouse starts to shake violently. An earthquake hits the site and the boss desperately screams not to drop the cargo. The rookie loses his balance and stumbles from the intensity of the quake. The rookie yells as he drops the bowl, scattering dozens of ribs across the warehouse floor. On impact, the bones shatter, releasing a thick cloud of white powder into the air. Maru immediately covers his face, coughing as he recognizes the suspicious substance. The guard laughs nervously and asks if this is the first earthquake Maru has experienced. He tries to play it off, saying it's just bone dust and tells Maru to get back to work. Marva keeps his nose and mouth covered, looking at them suspiciously, while the boss yells at the rookie to clean up the mess. Maru quietly backs away. The rookie then questions the boss, reminding him that the butcher is from Korea. He assumes Maru doesn't know what they're dealing with and more importantly that he doesn't understand Japanese. With his back to them, Maru replies in perfect Japanese, telling him to shut up. He looks over his shoulder, confirming that he heard and understood the entire conversation. The guard glares at the rookie with fury. He realizes too late that the Korean actually understands their language perfectly. Without hesitation, the guard shoves the gun in Maru's face. He apologizes just before he attacks. With the gun aimed at his head, Naru despairs, thinking his life is going to end like this. He reflects on how he worked hard every single day just trying to support his family. After all that effort, he finds himself about to die in such a meaningless way. His eyes widen in terror as he stares down the barrel of the gun up close. As the man's finger prepares to pull the trigger, Maru refuses to accept this end. The voice of his old boss returns to his memory, reminding him of the test on his first day of work. He recalls that while most would hesitate, Mari carried out the task without even blinking. Unlike others who would be shaken after taking an animal's life, Maru remained calm. With a focused gaze, he had asked what the most efficient way was to kill the pig with a single blow. At that moment, his boss had watched him with growing interest. A sinister smile formed on his face as he realized Maru's true nature. He understood that Maru was born to be a butcher, whether of pigs or of men. Back to reality, Maru moves in a single fluid motion. With a cold, determined look, he finally accepts his true identity. He is a butcher. The guard curses the situation, clutching the stump where his hand used to be. Margaret reflects that to this day he has slaughtered countless pigs, animals with 95% similarity to humans. And because of that experience, his eyes focus as he knows one thing very well. He knows exactly where to make the precise cut. He knows the exact spot for a blade. And above all, he knows exactly how to take someone down. He stares at his blade, finally understanding that he is in fact a butcher. In his mind, he recalls having processed countless pigs to this day. But now the body is bleeding for real. He then wonders if what he just defeated was a pig or a person. Back to reality, his eyes widen as he realizes that yes, it must be a person. Just then, heavy, quick footsteps advance towards him. Maru looks up, startled by the sudden presence. A furious man runs at him, screaming his name. He then tackles him, trying to bring him down. The impact throws him back, sending him crashing into the pig carcasses. He hits him hard and yells, questioning why he touched his brother. The man continues, saying he was a good person who was about to propose to his girlfriend. Maru just watches the blow approach, sensing the imminent danger. He realizes that to get out of this, he needs to hit a vital point, so he drives the blade in with all his might. Maru is shocked to see the attack didn't have the expected effect. The man calls him a punk and lands another punch, asking if he thinks he's never been stabbed before. He scoffs, saying a toothpick-like, "That doesn't hurt," and Maru is astonished by his resilience. In a fit of rage, the man lunges to grab him again. He grabs him by the throat, squeezing with crushing force. He screams, leaving Maru unable to breathe. Maru's vision darkens and he hears a familiar voice calling his name. In his mind, Hongjan Ho's voice explains that pigs have strong bones and thick fat. He reminds him that a true butcher must memorize the best path for cutting, and that with time he would instinctively be able to see this path on their bodies. Back in the present, Maru begins to twist the dagger still lodged in the man's flesh. With a cry of pain and effort, he keeps twisting. The pain finally hits him, and the man recoils as Maru lands a blow. In his mind, Hong Junho's voice echoes, stating that no matter what anyone says, he is a natural-born butcher. With a fixed gaze covered in gore, he finally accepts his true nature. Before him, the two men are now just bodies in the meat locker. He tries to drag one of them, muttering to himself that this guy is heavier than a pig. Suddenly, a wave of nausea hits him hard and he covers his mouth to hold back the vomit. The sight and smell finally overwhelm him and he throws up on the floor. Still panting, he tries to justify his actions, repeating that it was self-defense. He looks at the scene and realizes that if he went to the police, it would all just sound like an excuse. Then an even greater fear strikes him as he thinks about what the Yakuza will do. With a determined face, he concludes that the only way out is to set everything on fire. At that very moment, an armed man appears on a platform above, yelling and pointing a gun at him. Maru turns surprised and terrified to realize there was another one. The shooter opens fire, furious that he, a simple worker, had defeated his men. He runs for his life as the man vows to hunt him to the end. Maru dives into a walk-in freezer, and the shooter curses him for running away, calling him a coward. The shooter mocks him, saying he ran just to end up in a dead end. Then he yells for the coward to stop and fires a shot. Smoke rises from the barrel of the gun as he prepares to enter. He advances cautiously into the cold room but sees no one at first glance. As he walks among the carcasses, he taunts Maru, promising to kill him quickly if he surrenders. Suddenly, he stops and looks around, suspicious of the silence. His feet are planted next to one of the large hanging pig carcasses. With a sarcastic smile, he turns and says the situation is curious since he can't seem to find him. In a fit of rage, he starts shooting at one of the carcasses, yelling that he can't find him anywhere. From inside the meat, a wounded foot suddenly falls out, revealing the hiding spot. Maru emerges from within, screaming and charging with a cleaver in hand. The shooter turns completely shocked, not understanding what just happened. Taking advantage of the opening, he uses the hanging pigs for support. He lands a solid blow, sending the man flying backward. The man screams in rage and frustration, calling him a punk. Myra charges forward with the knife and yells for him to disappear. In a swift move, Marva buries the knife. He gets irritated by the insults and yells at the man to shut up. With a smirk, the shooter calls him a fool for not aiming for the neck. Fallen on the floor, the man manages to point the machine gun in his direction. He aims it up and yells for the pig to disappear for good. His finger is on the trigger, but it trembles, unable to pull. He grows desperate, unable to move his fingers. In his memory, Hong Junho explains the basial plexus, the bundle of nerves connecting the spinal cord to a pig's front legs. He continues showing that in humans the location is the same and a strike there immobilizes both a person and an animal. Hong Junho asks if he's starting to see the similarity between the two, warning him that a time will come when he'll get confused. Back in the present, Maru raises the cleaver over the man's head, who desperately begs him to wait. With an empty gaze, Maru stares at the fallen man before him, then he delivers the final blow. 6 hours later, a plane lands peacefully in Korea. Maru climbs a long staircase in his neighborhood carrying his travel luggage. Suddenly, fatigue hits him and he stops, panting and exhausted. He stops, thinking that maybe he should move out of this neighborhood. He remembers that luckily he managed to catch a flight back without being followed by the Yakuza. To ensure his safety, he set the place on fire, erasing all traces of what happened. He arrives in front of his house, believing that now everything is finally over. He now descends the last few steps towards the back entrance. Reaching the door, he finds it strange to see the lights on so early. He turns the door knob and gets ready to go inside. With a forced smile, he opens the door and announces he's back with lots of money and gifts, but his smile vanishes the moment he sees the scene inside. He freezes at the door, seeing the house has been completely ransacked. Shocked, he wonders what the hell happened in here. Seeing the open and empty drawers, his first thought is a burglar. Desperate, he starts screaming his mother's and Naru's names. As he moves through the room, he steps on something that cracks under his feet. He looks down at the floor, confused by the noise he just made. Crouching down, he finds the remains of a large bone and wonders what it is. His face fills with horror. Suddenly, a calm voice greets him, saying they're glad he's back. Maru looks up and finds a group of Yakuza men standing in the room. He can't believe they've already managed to find him here. An older, serious-looking man confronts him and asks if he is Maru. The man then says he was looking for them anyway and that Maru made the job easier. Maru grips the broken bone like a weapon, realizing they followed him to Korea to finish the job. With the bone in hand, he clenches his fist and vows to himself that he will defeat them all. Mara's expression changes to one of complete surprise and confusion. The man shows a police badge and introduces himself as Detective Hayes Sick from the Narcotics Investigation Division. With a serious look, he calls him by name and formally asks him to come with them. Maru stares at the man, incredulously repeating the words Detective and Narcotics Division. He looks through the door and sees police officers outside, realizing it wasn't the Yakuza of the cops. Images of the men he defeated in Japan flash through his mind, and he wonders if this is because of that. The detective interrupts his thoughts, saying he'll explain the details later and ask him for his cooperation. Maru looks at the mess in his house and questions if the police are allowed to do this and what he did wrong. One of the officers quickly says that he's got it all wrong. He explains that it wasn't them, but that the mess happened when his mother had an episode. Detective Hans Sick confirms the story of the serious tone. Then he reveals to Maru that his mother is using some nasty stuff, leaving him completely shocked. A family photo in a picture frame shows Maru, his brother, his father, and his smiling mother. He remembers how his mother was always immature, spending money non-stop, even after the family went bankrupt. But despite it all, he always loved her smile. The happy image is replaced by the sight of his mother in pain. He watches her from a distance on a hospital bed as doctors try to restrain her. The detective explains that when the police found her, she was already in that state. Sweat drips down Maru's face as he processes the terrible news. The detective then shows an evidence bag explaining that this stuff was found at the scene. He asks Maru if he knows when his mother started using drugs. Maru answers that he's not sure, and the detective presses him, wanting to know if he really doesn't know anything. The detective's gaze narrows, suspicious of the evasive answer. He finally says he understands and hands over his business card, asking him to call if he remembers anything. In the hospital hallway, the two officers walk away while Mario stands by his mother's bed. Later, inside a car in the underground parking garage, the situation is tense. Detective Han lights a cigarette. Beside him, his younger partner coughs and cries, choked by the thick smoke. The partner begs him to open the window, but the detective tells him to shut up so he can concentrate. He complains that the car feels like a gas chamber, but Han simply asks why he should be the one to go outside to smoke. The detective puts out his cigarette in a cup full of butts, repeating Maru's name to himself with a fixed stare, and he seems to be connecting the dots on something important about the case. Back at the hospital, Maru watches his unconscious mother in her bed, thinking none of this makes any sense. He reflects that without any information, the Yakuza couldn't have moved faster than him. Then he wonders who would do this to his mother, and just then his phone rings with manager Hong's name. Answering the call, Hong Junho worriedly asks if he's okay after the fire in Japan. Maru says he's fine but tries to end the call, saying he has work to do. On the other end of the line, Hong insists dramatically that he tell him what's going on. Suddenly, he directly asks if Maru's mother used drugs, leaving him speechless. Hong starts laughing hysterically, and Maru, furious, demands to know what he just said. The scene reveals Hong Junho relaxing while getting a skin treatment, and he asks if Maru received the bone marrow well. He continues mocking the idea that the Yakuza could have found his address. Maru stays silent, wondering what he did wrong to deserve this. Hong reassures him cynically, saying he did nothing wrong. Then he reminds him that he's an elite butcher and that he has a spot saved for him. Maru explodes with rage, shouting about what he did to other people's families. Hong cuts off the shouting with a cold voice, calling his name and making him stop. He then reveals that Maru's sister misses him so much that he decided to pay her a visit at her company. He reminds him that his mother needs rehab and he needs money to live. From the hospital, Maru hears the offer that he can make a lot of money by cutting. Even as he grinds his teeth, Hong invites him to go pick up a nobody with him. He then says goodbye in a cheerful tone, saying they'll talk later. Maru hangs up the phone and stares at his mother, still unconscious on the hospital bed. His hand grips the phone tightly, feeling the weight of the decision he has to make. With his face shadowed by darkness, he accepts his fate, having no other choice. The scene changes to a delivery truck. One of the men scolds his coworker for just standing there and insults him, saying this kind of task suits him better. Suddenly, one of the heavy bags falls from the back of the truck and hits the ground. His coworker sees him standing there and yells at him to pick up the pig that fell. Annoyed, the man picks it up and curses him out. He lifts it into the air, asking if this is how he treats the meat and threatens to tell manager home. The man curses but obeys, hoisting the heavy bag onto his shoulders. Getting out of the truck, he mutters and swears under his breath in frustration. Supervisor Baxo complains about the heat and the number of packages to load. His colleague Troy Duell tells him to go get the rookie when he's done. Beck gets annoyed and accuses him of treating him badly, but Troy reminds him he lost it rock, paper, scissors. With a provocative smile, Troy suggests he's scared of the rookie. A vein on Beck's forehead pops with anger at being called a pig. He grabs a meat tenderizer and furiously asks who he's calling a pig. Unfazed, Troy pulls out a bowing knife. The two weapons clash as they face off. The tension between them is so intense it manifests as a red dragon and a white tiger facing off. Troy taunts him, asking if he's finally mad after being called a pig for so long. The two glare at each other with hatred, ready to continue the fight at any moment. With a sigh, Troy puts his knife away and calls him adorable. He says he's leaving that Bake can have the truck, certain he'll cause an accident. Later that night, the delivery truck is parked in front of the building. Inside the truck, Bake is sleeping peacefully. Suddenly, a bubble pops, waking him from his trance. A cat appears at the truck window and Bake asks if it came to cover for Supervisor Choi. He picks up the cat and plays with it, asking if it came for the smell of meat. Then he grumbles, wondering why Choi is taking so long. He goes down the stairs complaining that Choi probably went to dinner with the rookie without him. Seeing the building door ajar, he assumes they had so much fun they forgot to close it. He walks in calling for Choi while holding the cat, his eyes wide in shock at the scene he finds inside. The hallway is completely destroyed with bottles and broken glass scattered across the floor. He approaches a body, cursing at Choi for bringing the rookie here. He asks the rookie where Supervisor Troy is warning him about Manager Hong. Confused by the lack of response, he leans in for a closer look. He finds Troy looking closer. He tries to call his name again. Desperate, he runs a hand through his hair, unable to believe that idiot let this happen. He grips the handle of his mallet, questioning why the rookie would dare point a knife at his superiors. With a manic grin, he warns the rookie that if he keeps up that attitude, he'll be on the floor soon. At that moment, S approaches, interrupting his intimidation. Bak comes face to face with Maru, who questions the word superior with a defiant tone. With a cold gaze, he asks Kui if Bak is also from World Livestock. Bak cracks a mocking smile, clearly underestimating the situation. With the sledgehammer on his shoulder, he insults Maru, saying, "Kids these days have no respect for their elders." In an explosive move, he attacks with the knife, aiming for Buck with a wide, unsettling grin. Beck tells a joke, asking if he knows what you call a strong cow. He answers it himself, sausage, while blocking Maru's attack with a violent swing of his sledgehammer. The impact is so powerful that the blade of Maru's knife shatters. Maru stares at the handle in his hand, shocked that his weapon was destroyed so easily. Bank raises the sledgehammer for another attack, yelling for the rookie to get a grip. Far away, a table is filled with a party cake and several expensive gifts. In a decorated room, men in suits clean up a mess while one of them remarks that he can't believe they sent Chief Bank to get the new guy. Another man agrees, worried that the combination of the two is dangerous, especially knowing Chief Choi's personality. A third, more agitated man shouts that Director Hong guaranteed this rookie was the best of the best. The argument heats up and one of them growls, asking if they have a problem with Chiefs Choi and Beck. The fight becomes physical and comical, with the men arguing over who is stronger and whether Beck's jokes are sacred or just plain weird. The man insists that unlike the others, he has actually seen Chief Bake fight. In a flashback, Chief Bake holds a man by the neck while telling one of his jokes about a cow on fire. He promises to spare the man's life if he gets the answer right. The very moment he became a legend. Back then, he defeated all the bullies and gangsters in the area, becoming the emperor of the region. He was already strong with just his bare hands, but what completed him was something else. It was the hammer that Director Hong himself gave him. That was the moment the physically strongest man met the most powerful weapon. And that's why he's called the Unstoppable Bull, charging forward with a crushing blow. He scoffs, asking how Maru managed to defeat Chief Choi with such pathetic skills. Maru struggles under the pressure of the hammer, acknowledging that Choi was indeed weaker than him. Suddenly, his eyes widen in complete shock. With a crazy smile, Bake raises the hammer to crush him once and for all. The blow misses as he dodges at the last moment. With the hammer stuck in the ground, he gets closer and tells another joke about a cow that knows how to paint. Then he yells the answer, Picasso, as he attacks again. Beck yells, annoyed that he isn't laughing, and hits him with a punch, but Maru manages to block the blow with his arm. The impact throws him against the wall, and Beck complains that he doesn't even laugh when his superior tries to lighten the mood. Margit realizes that the more they fight, the faster his opponent gets. Beck gets angry, questioning why he keeps attacking without responding to his words. He raises the sledgehammer and says that they'll see when he finally starts to laugh. While attacking relentlessly, he tells a series of jokes about cows, one hatching from an egg and another driving a car. The sequence of blows and jokes continues with Beck moving in a brutal and unpredictable way. He finishes a joke by smashing the floor and screaming the answer. A wide, insane smile spreads across his face as he admires the destruction. Maru seizes the moment and lunges forward with the broken knife handle, aiming for a blind spot that opened up. In an instant, his eyes widen at the perfect opportunity. The psycho actually caught the blade with his teeth. He tells another joke about a cow that bites a knife. He spits out the answer, looking completely crazed by the situation. Maru tries to finish him off, but Beck complains that even Troy laughed at that one. With a crazy smile, he mocks Maru, saying his scratches are weaker than a mosquito bite. He raises the sledgehammer over his head, preparing to show him what a real attack looks like. Then he spins in a fury of blows. His hand tightens on the weapon's handle with crushing force. He brings the sledgehammer down a final blow, and Maru rolls aside at the last second to escape. Lying on the floor, Maru realizes with frustration that the man has got even faster. He can barely follow his movements, understanding that now he can't even dodge anymore. Bag takes the chance and knees him in the face. He grabs Maru's foot and tells another joke about a cow that flies in the sky. Once again, he uses the silly answer as an opening, and with a violent pull, he throws him hard against the wall. Maru struggles to his feet, spitting from the impact. Before he can recover, Beck is already in the air, coming down on him for another attack. He stares at him, still not seeing him, laugh, and asks what you call a laughing cow. Suddenly, his expression changes to shock as he sees something dripping. Standing and wounded, Beck realizes the rookie only aimed for his vital points. He finally understands why director Hong called him the best of the best. Still standing, he looks down at Maru on the floor and says he wants to ask him something. With a defiant look, Maru asks if anyone ever laughs at his horrible jokes. Beck's expression twists into a blind, absolute fury. He tightens his grip on the sledgehammer's handle, saying he thought about going easy on him since he's new. But now he screams, enraged that Maru dared to insult his jokes. Elsewhere, someone hammers a nail. It's Hong Jun-ho admiring his artwork with a satisfied smile. He then looks at a photo of Maru in a heart-shaped frame, praising how photogenic he is. He interrupts his employees' fight and they immediately salute him. Hong reflects that among everyone, Chief Beck would be the perfect partner for Maru. His men agree that despite the rookie's talent, Chief Beck is still the best. Hong's smile vanishes and his expression turns grim. With a threatening voice, he asks why they are addressing our Maru so informally. The men are shocked and confused by their boss's unexpected reprimand. Hong questions them, saying they should address Maru as manager. One of them protests, saying the new guy is only 23 years old. With a smile, he reminds them that they called Chief Beck the unstoppable bull. Back in the fight, he says that a bull is still just a beast. The heavy sledgehammer finally slips from his weakened hand. He falls to his knees, defeated, as Maru stands over him. Beck looks up, exhausted and shocked by his own defeat. No matter what a beast does, how could it ever defeat a real butcher? He finally understands Maru's strategy, realizing he wasn't just blindly cutting. He realizes Maru used a technique to make all the cuts burst open at once the moment he exerted his strength. He admits to himself that he thought he was just toying with the rookie. He understands that in reality he was dancing in the palm of Maru's hand the whole time. Staring down the tip of a broken knife, Beck calls him rookie. Maru raises the sledgehammer and asks what you call an animal that can fall. Suddenly he finds himself in a shower of confetti and celebration. Before him, a crowd of men congratulates him and welcomes him as manager Maru. They shout with enthusiasm, promising to serve him with all their hearts. Maru says nothing, simply tossing something in their direction. The crowd gets excited seeing the badges fly, thinking it's a gift, but their joy turns to pure horror. He then reveals the badges belong to 2 more pigs he's dealt with. With a defiant look, he tells them to pick them up if they can. In response, all the men draw their weapons, ready to attack. Maru turns his back on them and walks forward the elevator, indifferent to the threat. He turns back with a hateful glare and calls them pigs, questioning why they don't fight. Sitting on a throne, Hong Junho watches his men, ready for a fight, and comments on this Maru guy. He notes that Maru has become much stronger than expected. In the center of the fight, Maru defends himself from multiple simultaneous blows. He then uses a mallet to strike one of the men. Maru glares at his enemies with a furious look, while Hong Jan-ho just watches all the henchmen charge screaming at Maru. He rushes forward with his knife and with a single spinning motion he takes down all the men around him. Hong Junho tells himself that this won't be enough. He then leans forward, resting his hands on his knees and standing up. His fist clenches as he whispers Maru's name. But instead of fighting, he grabs two glow sticks and starts waving them frantically. Janho yells for Maru to keep going and finish them all, leaving his subordinates completely confused. The scene changes to docile pigs in a field. Although they are passive animals, they sometimes attack humans. For a butcher, the first step is to knock out the pigs. Margot raises the meat tenderizer mallet into the air, and with a single blow, he brings it down on one of the men. One of the henchmen yells furiously, questioning how he dares to use Chief Beck's mallet. He then charges forward, ordering them to cut everything up as an offering on Beck's altar. The next step to follow is bleeding because before dissecting a pig, you have to drain everything. Maru raises his knife, now fully aware of this. Then he plunges it into the henchman who yelled. With the man limp in his arms, the others charge to attack him from behind. Maru uses the man's body as a shield, making him the victim of his own comrades. The other men stop in shock, calling Maru a bastard for taking Chief hostage. One of them runs towards Maru, screaming that he's going to save Chief. Now comes the first main stage of the dissection process. As the name implies, it is the act of skinning. With a crazed look, Maru raises the knife, ready to flee. He then charges forward, cutting down everyone in his path, while Hong Junho decides to leave the rest of the steps for later. The men's bodies lie on the ground, all defeated. Panting, Maru catches his breath for a moment. He then rises amidst the bodies, holding the mallet in one hand and the knife in the other. The survivors stare at him, terrified, calling him a monster and wondering how they could ever beat someone at the manager level. As he takes a step forward, one of them desperately screams for him to stay back. At that moment, Junho's voice calls out to him and Maru turns in surprise. Suddenly, he attacks without even thinking. Junho's voice continues, saying, a time would come when even he would be confused. He then asks if Maru knows what he is killing. With a terrifying smile, he crushes the object in his hand until it shatters into pieces. The scene changes abruptly, and Hong Junho appears holding a birthday cake, asking what he thought of the people he killed. He then shoves the cake hard into Maru's face, yelling and asking if they look like pigs. Janho declares he knew Maru would become like this one day, the same kind of butcher as him. Hong Junho says that's enough playing with the pigs and invites him inside. Maru lifts his head and asks where his sister is. The two stare at each other for a moment until someone steps on the remains of the cake scattered on the floor. Janho recognizes her as Kim Yanning, while Maru turns to look at her with her eyes full of tears. She wonders how someone could be so cruel. She brings a frosting-covered finger to her mouth. Still crying, Kim Yang glares at the group and asks who is responsible for this, her face contorted with fury. She yells again, demanding to know who did this. Lying on the floor, one of the injured men recognizes her and tries to speak. But before he can finish his sentence, he is stopped. With his foot on the man's body, Hong Janho points directly at Maru. Immediately, the other two surviving henchmen also turn and point in the same direction. Maru is completely confused by the accusation and can only say me. Suddenly, a gunshot echoes through the room, the bullet whizzing inches past his head. With the gun aimed directly at Maru, Kim Yang calls him a scumbag. He throws himself to the ground to dodge the shot, surprised that she's armed. Having fought an armed opponent before, he knows he needs to close the distance. Crouching, he prepares to charge, knowing that even though it's risky, it's his only chance to win. But to his utter surprise, she's the one who runs towards him to attack. Maru is shocked that she closed the distance between them herself. Despite his surprise, he reacts in time to deflect the gun. The gun fires into the air amidst the struggle, and now she is finally within his reach. With a focused gaze, he decides he'll end the fight in a single blow. However, she anticipates his move and prepares a kick. The blow lands squarely on his chin, snapping his head back from the impact. He growls in pain, feeling the force of the unexpected kick. Before he can recover, she hits him with a series of punches. He spits, not understanding how this girl can be so strong even in close quarters combat. She continues her furious assault, screaming about avenging her cake while he can't find an opening to defend himself. Hong Jan-ho yells for Maru to be careful, revealing that Kim Young is the best agent that in that same instant she manages to knock him to the ground with a swift blow. Jan-ho finishes his sentence, saying she was trained by North Korea as she pins him down and points the gun at him. In a flashback, dozens of bodies are scattered across the floor and over the tables. Kim Young is eating noodles and meat. She sits alone at a table, devouring the food amidst the chaos. Someone slowly approaches the girl. A muscular man with an axe on his shoulder appears, asking which livestock killed the pig he was hunting. He lifts his sunglasses, saying he wants to see the face of the one responsible. His eyes wide in surprise as he takes in the scene. He realizes the little girl isn't a pig but a human. With her mouth still full, she asks who he is and if he's a soldier from the Southern Army. The man gives a sinister smile and replies that she's a person but a beggar. He places a soda bottle on his axe and tells her to take her time eating. The girl grabs the drink and keeps eating, prompting the man to comment on her appetite. He suggests she could make a lot of money doing mukbang, and she asks what that is. Realizing she doesn't know, he shows her a video on his phone of a girl eating. He explains it's a way to make money just by eating like that. The girl is shocked at the idea of making money just for eating so much, her eyes sparkling. She can hardly believe she can earn money for this. As the man offers her a job with even more food, she suddenly stands up, declaring that her revolutionary spirit will never be corrupted by American capitalist ideals. But when he offers unlimited meals and snacks, she immediately swears loyalty and calls him master. She then gathers the rest of the food to clean the area, and he asks her to bring back some ice cream. A week later, Hong Jan-ho reads about a strange explosion in the newspaper and seems intrigued. Suddenly, Kim Young appears in torn, dirty clothes, and he asks if she was responsible for what's in the paper. He then changes the subject and asks if one of the popsicles she's eating is his. With her mouth full, she pretends not to know what he's talking about and is then formally introduced. The scene cuts back to the fight, with Kim Young pinning Maru to the ground, aiming at him. With a desperate effort, Maru manages to divert the weapon just as it fires. He uses the force of the movement to throw her aside and break free. Seizing the chance, she lands a powerful kick to his face. The intense fight continues in the background as a fallen cell phone on the floor starts to ring. The call is from his wife with an encouraging message from his kids on the screen, while the phone's owner stumbles nearby. Lying on the ground, Chifo answers the phone and tells his daughter he's a little busy at work. His face twists in horror as she innocently tells him that she and her mom already ate eel. Desperately asks what she means by that, as his daughter explains that her mom is also sleeping over at Grandma's house. He lets out a panicked scream when the girl asks if she's going to get a little brother now. The other two survivors call out to him, telling him to come hide with them. Relieved they're alive, Chief hears one of them ask enviously if he's going to eat eel again. Hong Jan-ho approaches and says Chief can go home early, but he begs to work overtime. Through his glasses, Jun-ho carefully watches the fight between Maru and Kim Young. He thinks that despite the noticeable difference in their levels, it's an interesting matchup. One of the henchmen trapped under his leg asks if Miss Kim Young will win. Jan-ho laughs and agrees that his Yang fights well with skills as incredible as the amount of food she eats. The henchmen start cheering, shouting for Kim Young to finish off Manager Ha. With a dark smile, Hong Jun-ho asks if they know something. He explains that while Kim Young was trained to be perfect, Maru was already human even when he knew nothing. He only taught Maru a few things because he found him interesting, starting with a lesson on deboning. In a flashback, he demonstrates a precise cut on a carcass, stating that dissection must be done in a single blow. Immediately, Maru replicates the move perfectly and asks if that's how it's done. Shocked, Jono reveals that Maru mastered the technique in just 1 month. He remembers Maru complaining about the difficulty and how he decided to propose an even greater challenge since he learned so quickly. The challenge was a monstrous creature in chains, a task that would take even a chief-level employee an hour. Jun-ho then unleashes the beast and orders Maru to give it a try. He recalls what he thought about Maru. The boy didn't even take 5 minutes to bring down the creature. At that moment, Jun-ho was certain he had found the perfect butcher he had always been looking for. Back in the present, Maru seizes an opening and manages to disarm Kim Yang, sending the pistol flying. Meanwhile, Jun-ho asks Chifo if he knows what a butcher is, and he explains that the word means a man with nothing. Jun-ho praises Chifo's knowledge. In the fight, Kim Yang uses the distance to reach for a knife on her back. Now armed, she knows the fight isn't over until it's over. She then unleashes a series of strikes against the boy. He grips the knife's handle firmly, resisting her force. Then he shoves her back and counterattacks. Kim Young-eun's eyes widen in shock, unable to believe what she's seeing. She realizes he's copying her moves. Junho comments that it wouldn't be easy for Maru to defeat Kim Yang as they exchange a series of rapid blows. However, he points out that it's impossible to ignore the fact that Maru is improving by the minute. Maru manages to block one of her attacks with the blade of his own knife, and in the end, the fight comes down to a matter of time. Both prepare for the next move, planting their feet firmly on the ground. The question is whether she can defeat him before he catches up to her, or if he can hold on long enough to surpass her. Junho then turns to his men and asks if they're also curious about the outcome. He gets up, standing on top of them. With a malicious smile, he says he won't let them watch. The men beg to see the end of the fight, but instead Junho simply crouches down. Right in front of them, a single swing of his axe creates a shock wave that sweeps through the entire hall. He says he's going to show them something even more interesting, leaving Maru, Kim Young, and his henchmen terrified. With the axe on his shoulder, he calls out to Maru in a serious tone. Then, with a challenging smile, he invites him to face him, gritting her teeth. Kim Young asks if the old man is messing with her. Pointing her knife, she calls him a traitor for hurting her pride. Holding a card, he says he first needs to go to a luxury buffet that closes in an hour. Then he throws a golden card into the air and tells her to run, and she desperately scrambles to catch it. Junho watches her, calling her crazy for trying to do this just because a cake fell. He turns to Maru with a sinister smile, saying their time has finally come. Maru leaps into the air with his knife, shouting and demanding to know where his brother is. Maru's expression turns to pure shock and confusion. Junho effortlessly blocks the attack with his axe, sending Maru flying backward. Maru wonders what that man's true strength is. Junho approaches and says that from now on they need to fight with everything they've got. Maru's eyes widen, high alert. A white line cuts through the air and Maru feels as if he's been split in two. He freezes, feeling the cut without even being touched, and whispers Chief Hong's name. Junho warns him that if he lets his guard down, he's done for, leaving Maru even more shocked by his power. Maru begins to remember when he was 21 years old. After his father's death, he had to become the head of the family. Because of that, he had to work a world livestock to survive. The work was tough, but honestly it wasn't so bad. He remembers Junho teaching him the tricks of the trade because there was someone there who treated him like his own son. Maru trusted him, but then he saw his mother in a hospital bed and wondered why. He screams in desperation, demanding to know why it happened. He furiously attacks Junho, screaming and asking why he did that to him. Junho blocks the blow with ease, yet Maru demands he tell him the reason. He then strikes with the axe, reminding him to keep his movements simple. Junho explains that the bigger the movement, the bigger the opening, and Maru thinks he's found an opportunity. With his knife raised, he prepares to strike, certain this is his chance, but Junho just flicks him on the forehead, teaching him to tell a real opening from a fake one. With his forehead marked, Maru realizes that attacking Chief Hong's openings just doesn't work. Maru wonders what to do if attacking the openings doesn't work, considering slicing him up bit by bit. He also considers charging in and ending it all at once like he did with the supervisor in glasses. However, he remembers the fight against Kim Yang and realizes he needs to approach this differently. With a wide, unnerving smile, Junho approaches and asks what Maru is thinking about. He warns him not to daydream in the middle of fight. Junho scolds him for letting his guard down, reminding him that it could end badly. As Maru retreats, Junho hits him with the handle of the axe and criticizes him for dodging in a straight line. He explains that this is what happens when your movements are obvious, and Maru desperately tries to grab the axe. Junho easily stops him, throwing him far away. He then knocks Maru down with the blow from the axe, questioning what he learned in his training. Enraged, Maru charges forward, screaming, ready to attack again. The henchmen watch in awe, commenting that the boss could have ended the fight but is just playing with him. Chief says they don't understand, thinking Junho is trying to finish him off in an even crueler way. The other men agree, calling the boss a monster and a beast, while Chief tries to say that's not what he meant. He then reveals the truth, explaining that Maru is just keeping up with the boss's pace. Chief declares that manager Maru is the real monster as Junho blocks his attack and advises him to aim a little lower. Maru grinds his teeth in frustration, Feeling the power gap, he charges again, shouting for Junho to fight seriously while Chief claims they are witnessing the birth of a monster. Junho laughs and blocks the blows with ease, saying that if Maru wants a real fight, he needs to come at him with everything he's got. As Maru keeps improving with each attack, Junho points out that he's still missing something. He then uses the weight of the axe to overpower Maru's knife, explaining that its size gives him an advantage in a direct clash. Maru can barely move under the pressure while Junho taunts him, saying he's not even using his full strength yet. He falls to his knees, exhausted, and Junho asks if he's been eaten properly to have so little strength. With the axe pressed against Maru, he questions if the kid really thinks he can do anything with that kind of effort. Under the pressure, the blade of Maru's knife shatters. Junho then smashes the ground beside him with the axe, ordering him to get up, because humans don't crawl like animals. He stares at the broken knife and Junho asks if he's going to cry over a broken sword. Since things have come to this, Junho suggests they fight barehanded. Seeing another knife, he jumps to grab it until his boss asks if fighting without a weapon scares him. Junho concludes that Maru really does need a sword as he picks up a table. As Junho throws the table at him, Maru screams that he won't just stand there and watch. Yan leaps screaming and ready to attack, but Junho just seems annoyed by the situation. At the last second, Junho bends down to tie his shoelace, leaving Maru completely shocked as he stops his attack. He then grabs Maru's ankle, scolding him for running with his shoelaces untied. With a single motion, he throws him into the air, saying, "You have to take care of the basics." Junho hits him in midair with the side of his axe, looking genuinely frustrated. As Maru falls, Junho yells, asking how he's going to live without him. Maru's body slams into the ground. With the young man down and groaning in pain, Junho decides, that's enough for today. He approaches and asks if Maru was wondering why he did all of this. He asks if he knows how much the factory he burned down in Japan was worth. The answer comes next. The factory was worth 300 billion won. Junho then questions if he thinks he can handle the Japanese who will now come after him. In the end, Maru will need to find a way to settle things that is acceptable to them. Then he brings up Maru's mother because she is proof of the punishment he deserves. Junho then points to the bodies on the floor, saying, this whole mess proves Maru's ability to pay the money back. He holds his sunglasses and calls Maru by his name. With a smile, he extends his hand and invites him to work with him. He says that while 300 billion is a lot of money, Maru can earn even more if he works with him. As everything is already set up, Junho then turns and walks away, telling Marva to get back to work as soon as he recovers. Lying on the floor, Maru wonders why all of this happened. He thinks that if there was a reason for everything, Junho could have just explained the situation. Hearing the question, Junho turns around and says the answer to that is obvious. With a maniacal smile, he states that this way is much more fun. Mara remains on the floor, staring at the ceiling, completely exhausted and defeated. A small smile begins to form on his face as he lets out a faint laugh. Suddenly, the laugh turns into a hysterical and uncontrolled roar of laughter. Junho turns around with a satisfied expression and asks if Maru has to admit it was fun. Maru slowly gets up, agreeing that it was fun but also completely ridiculous. He faces Junho and confesses that he saw him as his mentor, his father, and his savior. Maru runs his hands through his hair in disbelief and asks if all of this was just for his entertainment. He accuses him of messing with his family just for fun and then corrects himself from calling him Chief Hong. Maru then renames him, calling him Hong the Pig. With bloodshot eyes, he grabs his own hair and declares that now it begins. Junho clenches his fist, furious, and asks if Maru just called him a pig. With his body enveloped in a red aura, he raises his axe and challenges him to come at him with his ultimate weapon. Meanwhile, Sunshin approaches and asks Shifu what he's doing on the ground. He replies that he's writing his will and tells his men to do the same quickly. Shivo explains that no one has ever survived after seeing Junho fight for real. His conclusion is terrifying. They're all screwed. Junho swings his axe, shattering the ground, but Maru leaps back and narrowly dodges. Maru senses another attack coming his way. Junho calls out to him, saying he was proud of him and asks if he's forgotten everything he was taught. He charges with the axe, yelling that he had warned him not to back up in a straight line. Suddenly, something catches Junho's eye and he stops. He grips the axe handle tightly. Then Maru launches into the air with his knife ready as Junho realizes he baited the straight line attack to aim for his face. Junho wonders if he was aiming for the very axe that pinned him to the ground earlier. With a defiant smile, Junho admits that a challenge is good. Margit presses the knife towards him, but Junho says that to cut his face he'd have to get closer. In a swift, precise move, he catches the tip of the knife. Margit manages to slash his chin. With another move, he follows up with a powerful strike. Chief's men yell in shock, unable to believe that Hong Jan-ho has been wounded. Jan-ho stands still for a moment, showing no reaction. Shifo stares at the scene, stunned by Maru's ability to adjust his distance and his knife in the blink of an eye. Jan-ho sees him running towards him and calls him Little Maru. He then lunges forward and lands a kick on Maru, saying he was just playing around but was attacked with intent. Maru stays on his feet as Jan-ho realizes he's serious about this. He warns that if Maru keeps coming at him like that, he'll bury the axe in his chest. Then without hesitation, he stomps hard on Maru's chest, deciding he has no choice but to kill him. The impact sends Maru flying backward. Jan-ho approaches slowly in no hurry. He seems surprised that Lil Maru managed to withstand the blow. Next, he rests the axe behind his neck. With a sadistic smile, he flexes his muscles and asks what he thinks of that. He taunts him, asking if Maru knows which way the axe will come from, left or right or from above. He yells as he raises the weapon for the final blow. Maru's eyes widen in pure concentration. At the last second, Maru blocks the axe with a sledgehammer. Junho takes a step back, confused by what has happened. Maru angrily asks if Junho knows what you call the act of killing a cow. Then he attacks repeatedly, screaming for the cow to die. Chief watches the scene in horror, recognizing Maru's weapon. He recognizes the sledgehammer technique as Chief beaks, and the knife strikes are identical to Chief choice. Maru swiftly changes his grip on the knife. Next, he uses the precise slashes of Miss Kim. Chief realizes, shocked, that Maru has copied the techniques of everyone. He's faced and wonders if Hong Junho could actually lose. Junho is forced to retreat, covered in cuts. He grits his teeth, furious, and lets out a curse. In an instant, he grabs Maru by the neck and asks if he really sees him as a pig. Junho starts punching him relentlessly, yelling that he treated him well and cleaned up all his messes in Japan. He continues to beat him, questioning if this is how Maru dares to see him. With a final punch, he throws him aside, asking if this is how he repays his kindness by becoming his enemy. Jan-ho picks up his axe and warns Maru not to get it twisted because he hasn't used his full power even once. Maru's blood drips onto the floor. Though exhausted, Maru gets back up and Junho asks if he really wants to see this through to the end. He raises the axe and declares that he can't let him die. Upside down, Maru reflects that if he's going to die anyway, he might as well kill his opponent first. He asks himself if he should be thinking about death after giving up all his memories to get his revenge. To keep from hesitating, he forced himself to throw away all the positive feelings he had for Junho. He even went as far as abandoning his emotions to see people as objects, also he could win. Margaret thought he had thrown everything away, but he realizes there's still something he hasn't discarded. The only thing he had left was his own life. He faces Junho, who prepares for the final blow with his axe. To win, he understands he'll need to throw away his life along with his opponent's. He prepares to abandon his will to live in everything else. Then Marvel runs and leaps for the final attack. Suddenly, Kim Young appears, shooting and yells, asking if he wants to die. Furious, she declares she's going to stir up a real hornet's nest. Her eyes widen in pure shock as she sees something. The gun slits from her hand and falls to the ground. Hong Junho turns with a smile and asks if the little lady has finally arrived. Junho throws a key on the ground and tells Kim Yang that she'll find a safe in his office. He reveals that all of her contracts are inside, leaving her completely stunned. He then tells her that half of everything in there is his retirement money, and he instructs her to give the other half to Maru before falling backward lifeless. Maru stands over the body, calling out to him in a low voice. With tears of fury and pain, he grits his knife and screams for him to attack him once and for all. In a flashback, a boy begs for his life. Junho rips out his eyes. This is the story of a man who sits on a pile of bodies, a man who lived as the king of a pigsty eating desperately. This breeding ground called the pigsty raised humans like pigs in a special way. First, to push them to the extreme, they kept them hungry. They withheld food to bring them to the brink of starvation as hunger made them violent. The hunger was so intense it turned anyone into a beast. Then they would give them food one last time and watch a desperate hand sinks into the sludge of food. The system was simple. Watch the only pig that survived this hell and see how he gets all the food for himself. But no matter how much a pig runs, in the end, it's just a pig. and it would be tamed with even stronger violence like the repeated sessions of starvation. A brutal and hideous violence that shaped the man he became. Only a few pigs survive the harsh selection, protecting their food with their own lives. Then these selected pigs are sent on missions. He approaches a mob boss and asks if he is the Sea of Blood of Mappo, leaving the man surprised. In the blink of an eye, he stabs the man. The fate of these pigs is sealed from the beginning. The boss's henchmen stare at him, shocked and furious. They are raised to fight and in the end to be slaughtered, but sometimes something different happens. The pig that was supposed to be slaughtered returns alive. Even when they return, they are met with a gesture of contempt. The pig doesn't become human again, it just returns to its cage. He sits among him in his cell, reaffirming to himself that he is a pig. He believes he must live and die like a pig, but fate wouldn't allow it. He was sent to his death countless times, but he always came back alive. And as he kept surviving, a new thought began to emerge. A question started to echo in his mind. He would look at the pile and wonder if he was hunting humans or pigs. And as always, he played his part, now wearing a suit and carrying his axe. One day upon returning, he was met by a group of men who commented on his arrival. The man with glasses introduced him to a woman, saying this was the pig he had been talking about. Faced with Junho's indifference, the man became visibly irritated. He struck him with a baton, yelling about how a mere pig dared to ignore him in front of the others. Junho's eyes filled with fury as he realized the hypocrisy of the one who raised them like animals. The man apologized to the president, saying the guy was skilled but had no manners. Suddenly, she slaps him, scolding him for interrupting their discussion. She stares at him and states that he isn't a human either but a pig, leaving him speechless. At that moment, Junho realized that if he was no different from an animal, then he would take the ray of his own destiny. He stood up and advanced on the man. The others tried to stop him, shouting that he couldn't touch that person, but he raised his axe and furiously declared that he would become the king of pigs. The president watches him, surprised by his audacity. Without hesitation, he buries the axe in the man. The man falls to the ground, finished. Junho takes the sunglasses from the corpse. He puts them on and tells her that if she wants to use animals, she'd better use the best there is. She stares at him with a serious, indecipherable expression. With a subtle smile, she agrees to give him a chance. And that's how his kingdom was born, an empire of butchers. His life was all about raising and training pigs. During these monotonous days, he met Yang and he also met Maru. As he spent time with them, he began to dream of a day when he too could live like a human being. But this hope was cut short by a cruel order, questioning what dispose of meant. He yelled into the phone, furious, asking why he should dispose of them after cleaning up Maru's mess and making a deal with the Japanese. The president's voice sounds cold and final, stating that they have done well so far. She warns him that if he doesn't dispose of them, he will be disposed of along with them. Then she threatens him, asking if he'd rather be sent back to the pixie. With a clenched fist, he reaffirms to himself that he is a pig, and for a pig, orders are absolute, but even so, he still wanted to save Maru. He thought that if he brought Maru into the underworld, the president would change her mind. But everything changed when Maru himself began to see him as a pig and that he could not bear. Being seen that way by him was unacceptable. He admits he thought about killing him as ordered. However, in the end, he just couldn't kill him. He saw the difference between a pig living without purpose and a human risking their life to protect what's important. And seeing Maru that way, he felt ashamed of himself. In that moment, he wished to become a human. He wanted to be seen as a human. He leans in and tells Maru to look. With a fatal wound in his chest, he asks if in the end he is a human. With a smile of acceptance, he tells Mari that he must live like a human until the very end. This is the story of the king of the pixie, the story of a man who died as a human being. A shadow falls over Junho's body. Troy Kahan kneels beside him in layman, saying he wishes he had been the one to kill him. He is the senior managing director of World Security, an imposing and somber figure. He forces Junho's eye open. K-Jun holds his eye and declares he's taking back what was stolen from him. He steps away from the body, coldly wishing him to rest in peace. On the phone, he confirms the situation to President Yu. He reports that Junho is dead and that the safe under his responsibility has disappeared. Facing an army of men, he reassures her, telling her not to worry. As a van drives down a dark, rainy road, Kijang concludes that it doesn't matter where Junho's killer runs. He promises he will finish him and that he will bring the safe back. The scene cuts back to Cho Kong, who's on the phone with Chiryu. He looks at a screen and confirms the information he received. Through the security cameras, he reports that Junho is dead and that the safe he was responsible for has disappeared. Hijun reassures her, saying it doesn't matter where Junho's killer runs. With a punch, he shatters the screen and swears he'll finish him. He then concludes, promising to bring the safe back. Back at the scene, the security camera turns toward them. Maru approaches Junho's body and calls out to him. With his face streaked with tears of rage, he screams for him to get up and fight. Kim-young thinks in shock that he wasn't this strong a moment ago. She wonders how he could have gotten so strong so suddenly as he walks toward her. Her instincts alert her, and her hand tightens on her hidden weapon. Her intuition screams at her to avoid this man at all costs. Startled by his aura, she lets out a tense breath. With her hands up, Kim-young surrenders. Maru presses the knife against her and asks why she wants to die sooner. At that moment, Chifo's men throw themselves in front of her, yelling for them to stop fighting. Sunshin desperately explains that with director Hong dead, they're dead too, so there's no reason to fight. Ilbong adds that if they stick together, their chances of survival increase. They form a human shield around her, protecting her from Maru. Marva then asks with a serious look where his younger sister is. The men look at Kim-young and suggest she must have taken her. She thinks for a moment and realizes he's talking about Hanaru. She begins to explain that Mr. Hong sent her to feed the girl, so she took her to an expensive Chinese restaurant, but the company card was maxed out and she had to leave to get a new one. The scene shows her remembering the crushed cake and how consumed by rage she fought with her butcher comrade, the one behind the accident. And then in the middle of the chaos with Mr. Hong, she completely forgot about him. With her face covered in tears, she confesses that she has sinned. On the edge of the moving van, Kim-young prepares to jump and asks if she should leap from there. The men explain they need to split up to not complicate the route, encouraging her to show off her North Korean Special Forces skills. Terrified, she turns to Maru and says she can't do it. With a cold, commanding look, he simply orders her to jump. She leaps from the van, shouting an oath that she will complete her mission. While the other men praise her, impressed, Maru remains silent. He thinks to himself that he needs to save his mother and Naru and that he must act fast because the world group is coming. Meanwhile, at Maru's house, Detective Hae-sik analyzes the crime scene and finds no victims. He notices something on his glove and finds it strange that there are no victims at the scene. Outside, another officer calls to him, informing him that the residents were evacuated after hearing loud noises from the basement. Officer Lee worries about what might have happened to Maru, but Detective Han tells him it's time to go. The young officer asks where, and they leave the crime scene. The detective reveals they are heading to the hospital where Maru's mother is admitted. At the hospital, a nurse informs Maru and Ilbong that the patient was already discharged by a group of men in suits. Ilbong desperately calls Kim-yang, and Maru hears him scream into the phone, shocked to learn that Naru isn't at the restaurant. Maru grinds his teeth in fury as he realizes men in suits also took his sister. He runs down the hospital corridor, shouting that they'll definitely use his mother and sister as hostages. Ilbong quickly concludes that the only secure and restricted place in the city center where they could take them is the World Security Headquarters. The two stop abruptly, shocked by the difficult mission ahead of them. At that exact moment, the elevator doors open and a group of men in suits steps out. Leading them is the imposing director Chu Kara on walking with an intimidating presence. With a smirk, he says he didn't expect to run into him like this. The person he's speaking to is Detective Han Taste-sik, who glares at him seriously. Kong taunts him about constantly changing partners, and the detective retorts about how he got his promotion. Han then asks what a gangster like him is doing in a hospital, and Kong replies that he just came for a visit. As he walks past, Kij Jong advises him to take good care of the people around him. The detective watches him walk away, muttering that it was a waste of time and that he should worry about himself. Suddenly, one of his men runs toward him, shouting that there's a huge problem. Panicking, tries to warn that Maru just got back to the hospital room and that he left him. Kalong silences him with a gesture, showing he's already aware of the situation. He bites his own lip to stifle a scream as Kijang warns him about the detective's presence. With a muffled scream, the man rises in pain, learning the hard way not to speak carelessly. The detective then turns to Kijang and says that instead of worrying about others, he should take care of his own subordinates. He threatens him, saying the next visit will be to his coffin and that he'll make a generous donation. Intrigued, Kijang wonders how Maru managed to move faster than them and suspects he might have helped. Meanwhile, Margit and Ilbong come across a man who greets them. A tall, well-dressed man approaches, saying he was waiting for them. He invites them into the car so they can talk. Maru glares at him, suspicious of the sudden appearance of another man in a suit. Driven by rage, he lunges forward and asks if he's the one who took his mother and sister. The man calmly confirms it, and Maru's eyes fill with fury. Surprisingly, the man bows, apologizing for his rudeness. He then gestures toward the car where a woman is seated. He explains that the chairwoman will clarify all the details. The woman introduces herself as Shim Yunyang, the president of the Charlotte Hotel, and greets Maru. Sitting elegantly in the car, the woman greets Maru. She says, "It's an honor to finally meet him." She then introduces herself as Shin Yunyang, the president of the Charlotte Hotel. Maru angrily interrupts her, demanding to know where his family is. Suddenly, another door opens and Sunshin steps out, saying everything will be explained. Maru and Ilbong look back, completely shocked by his appearance. Ilbong asks, surprised, why they're coming from there, and Sunshin simply greets him as manager. He explains that they acted as soon as they received information that the World Group had started to move, and in response, forces hostile to the group ask Charlotte for help. Sunshin apologizes for the surprise, but Maru confronts him for taking his family without permission. With eyes full of fury, he asks how they are any different from the World Group. Sunshin quickly asks him to look closely at the tablet. He shows that the World Group's tracking team has just arrived at the hospital, stating that if it weren't for Charlotte, his family would have already been found. Maru stares at the screen, silently processing the information. His gaze shifts to Sunshin, still suspicious of the situation. Shin Yunyang invites Maru to get in the car. With a subtle smile, she promises they will take him to his family. The Charlotte Group operates in the pharmaceutical, petrochemical, hotel, and financial sectors. Meanwhile, the World Group focuses on the defense, trade, distribution, construction, and security industries. Although both presented themselves as major corporations, behind the scenes, they were locked in a fierce battle. A single man with his overwhelming brute force put an end to this long war. As a result, the Charlotte Group was defeated and split into two factions: those who wanted to hand over the group to the World Group, and those who, like her, wanted to protect and maintain what was left. Maru, impatient, asks what this has to do with him and tells her to get to the point. Ilbong intervenes, pointing out that despite Director Hong's death, the World Group still holds overwhelming power. Yunyang explains that even though he killed the director, it would be nearly impossible to protect his family and escape the group alone. She says that with Charlotte's wealth and information power, they can help him succeed. She looks at him, about to make a proposal. Maru looks back at her, visibly confused by the direction of the conversation. Suddenly, a van violently collides with the car they're in. The laundry car's driver loses control of the steering wheel from the impact. The convoy of vehicles skids dangerously on the road. In the back of the van, the men are thrown against each other by the force of the crash. The luxury car is thrown to the other side of the road. After the collision, the vehicles come to a stop in opposite positions on the road. Shin Yunyang opens her eyes, feeling the pain from the accident. She realizes that Maru protected her with his own body during the impact. He then lets her go and asks if she's okay. Maru looks outside, and when he asks if it was the World Group's men, she denies it. She explains that because Charlotte is divided, her older brother Shimyang Yu is trying to kill her to hand over the group, and she believes he's the one who sent the troops approaching them on the road. With her hand on his face, she proposes a deal. The Charlotte Group will protect his family from the World Group. In return, she asks him to act as her sword for a while. Maru stares at her in silence, weighing the proposal. He then turns to the car door and says she'll have to prove it to him. Maru challenges her to prove she has the power to protect his family, and then he promises he will become her sword. Meanwhile, elsewhere, director Choi Kijang gets out of car. He comments on the procession as he approaches the location. As he heads towards the stairs of a large temple, he notes that the place has been grandly prepared to receive him. He then orders the gates to be opened. Inside, a funeral is being held for Hong Jan-ho. A long line of men in suits are paying their respects. A woman with her face in the shadows greets him and he bows in respect. She is Yudane, the president of the World Group, and she asks about those responsible for Director Hong's death. Hijang reports that one of them escaped, but they found the other one. The scene cuts to Kim Yang, who worries that her comrade won't leave her alone. She laments not having money for food, thinking her butcher comrade would have rescued her if the mission had failed. In reality, she's at a Chinese restaurant where the employees are terrified. She is surrounded by an army of men in suits and realizes she has no choice but to fight. With her eyes shadowed, Kim Young faces her captors and calls them my sweet South Korean comrades. Then with a mocking smile, she asks how much money they have. Meanwhile, on the road, Maru gets out of the car and faces the approaching group of men alone. Their leader, Joe Bayango, promises his men promotions and then questions why an anchovy like Maru is there. He pulls out a knife and orders his men to clean up the mess. They surround Maru, mocking him, asking if he's Shim Yunyang's lover. One of them approaches to taunt him but is taken down. Maru then moves quickly, taking out other men around him. He wonders if it has always been this easy. With a precise strike, he finishes another and begins to understand something. He's finally realizing the true strength of the people he's faced so far. Maru pauses for a moment, surrounded by fallen bodies, understanding the power gap. The leader, Joe, terrified, pulls out a long knife and yells, asking who the hell he is. He lunges forward in a desperate attack, demanding an answer. In a swift move, his hand is shattered. The leader, Joe Bango, screams in pain and shock, looking at his hand. But then his other hand is struck. Clutching his hand, the leader curses him. Maru turns to him, preparing for the final blow. With a swift movement, he silences the leader, and then with a precise cut, he finally finishes his opponent. Shin Yunyang approaches him from behind. He turns around and says he's proven himself, and now it's her turn. Maru faces her and demands that she prove she has the power to protect his family. He looks at the wrecked car and asks how they'll get to his mother now and if they'll have to walk. She smiles and reveals she's already called for transport as a helicopter appears in the sky. Yunyang reminds him that he asked her to prove her power. She then invites him to go and reveals their destination, that person's funeral. Outside the temple, a mantra is recited about the vows that bind the heavens to this sacred realm. Inside, a monk continues the prayer declaring his repentance for all evil acts born of greed, anger, and ignorance. The head monk, accompanied by his disciples, then chants a song to the Buddha that purifies the obstacles of karma. As the prayer continues, Chairwoman Yudin, in a solemn gesture, lights an incense stick in honor of Hong Jan-ho. Director Chua Kijang watches the ceremony until one of his subordinates hurries over. The man informs him in a low voice that there's a big problem outside. Kong then goes down the temple stairs to investigate. Outside, he is informed that Marum has appeared on the scene. Meanwhile, at the Chinese restaurant, Kim Yang searches the bodies of the defeated men, complaining that the emissaries of the World Group are always causing trouble. Sitting on the pile of bodies, she counts the little money she found and wonders why they have so little. Just then she gets a call from Chief O, who asks where she is and tells her about the funeral. Shocked, she repeats the news. Maru is at Manager Hong's funeral. Outraged, she shouts into the phone, complaining that they went to eat Yoka Jang without her. Back at the temple, Maru and Yunyang's assistant are confronted by a huge army of men in suits. One of them glares at him and asks if that's Maru, the bastard who killed Manager Hong. One man wonders if Maru even knows where he is, while another, furious, asks for a tool kit to offer him to Manager Hong's spirit. Yunyang's assistant asks Maru how he's feeling, and he asks about what. She then asks if he isn't nervous, but he replies no, since she herself said she was going to prove herself. He remarks that in that case, she should be able to handle the situation. A burly man grabs him by the suit and confronts him, asking if he's the bastard who defeated Manager H. He is Kim Min-suk, Vice Director of World Trade, and he demands to know why Maru is walking around with Charlotte's girl. He gets closer and asks if Charlotte was backing him from the start. He calls him an inferior and insinuates it was all a sham, but he's cut off by a voice. Annoyed, he turns and asks who dares to interrupt him. To his surprise, someone yanks his cheek hard, making him scream. It's Director Cho Kijang, who kicks another man aside and orders everyone to get out of the way. He apologizes for Maru having to deal with his subordinates and acknowledges that killing Manager Hong was no small feat. He then introduces himself as Cho Kijang, Executive Director of World Security, and promises to treat him with the respect he deserves. However, other men approach and tell Director Choi not to have all the fun for himself. The President and Vice President of World Investment Securities arrive, and one of them wonders if capturing Maru would make him stronger than Manager Hal. The World Group executives argue over who will have the honor of fighting, with one declaring that Maru is his and the others can have what's left. Maru discreetly tries to draw a weapon, but his hand is stopped by Shin Yunyang, who approaches. She walks confidently toward the group and asks if this is all world livestock can do. One of the men retorts that their honor has been tarnished, but Yunyang cuts him off, saying he doesn't understand the glory of taking down the man who defeated Manager Han. She explains that the idea is to avenge the murdered manager and claim the glory, but she questions the meaning of everyone ganging up on a single man and whether the honor and glory they seek isn't lost in the process. She reminds them that Maru fought Manager Hong on equal footing and won honorably. Then she taunts them, asking if ganging up on him finally gives them the confidence they lacked when Manager Hong was alive, which enrages them. Kim Mio gets angry and declares that he won't tolerate anyone touching his people. Yang then makes her final threat, warning that if they kill Maru here, they must prepare for a war. She concludes saying there will be no honor, glory, or profit, and challenges anyone confident enough to bear those losses to step forward. With a look of contempt, she calls them all talk. The executives fall silent, visibly intimidated by her threat. Maru watches her, surprised and impressed by her display of power. A voice applauds slowly. It's Chairwoman Yuding who approaches and addresses Shin Yunyang. She remarks that just like her father, Yunyang is good with words. Then she turns to Maru and stares at him and identifies him as the man and killed Manager Hong. She studies him with a curious gaze and a slight smile. Her smile widens, revealing a predatory expression. Yuding turns to leave with her men and promises they will meet again. As she walks away, Maru asks who that woman is. Yunyang Unk's assistant explains that she is Yuding, the chairwoman of the World Group, and warns him that she is the person he needs to be most careful of. The assistant then takes off her high-heeled shoes and the two of them walk barefoot through the temple. They finally stop in front of Hong Janho's funeral altar. His portrait shows him with a wide, defiant smile even in death. Facing Hong Janho's portrait, Maru states that he didn't come to mourn his death. He remembers his mother's suffering and says that what he did to his family is unforgivable. With the image of his own fury in his mind, he confesses he wanted to defeat him with his own hands. But he wonders why when he had the chance, John Ho let himself die at his hands. He recalls the last words of his former mentor. In the end, I'm only human too, Arai. And then he questions if the final advice, you must live your life as a human until the very end, was really for him. He bows in a gesture of deep respect, asking why he died for him and why he said those words. Maru acknowledges that he might not know the answer now, but he believes that if he can survive one day, he will find what he's looking for. He asks Junho not to worry. He stands up with a new determination and vows that with everything he learned from him, he will defeat everyone and survive. Outside the temple, Shin Yunyang calls out to him. With the wind blowing through her hair, she declares that from the moment he walks through that door, he will be her sword. Mari shows a faint smile of acceptance. He and Yunyang Unk's assistant then walk away from the temple under the light of the rising sun. The helicopter blades spin rapidly, preparing for departure. From the temple courtyard, Director Cho Kai-jong watches the aircraft take off. With a cigarette between his lips, he murmurs Maru's name. He flicks the cigarette away and adds Shin Yunyang's name to his list. As the cigarette falls, he runs a hand through his hair. With a smile, he declares that things are about to get interesting. The imposing facade of the Hotel Charlotte rises in Sioux. A week later, Shin Yunyang walks through the lobby. As the staff bows in reverence, a subordinate hurries over, saying there's a big problem with those people. He explains that they're trying to break into the safe again. Yimong sides, remembering they are Maru's colleagues. She asks them to handle the situation discreetly, but another employee interrupts her with a new problem. He points out that the woman has started eating the guests' food. Despite the chaos, their presence has brought a sense of peace and normalcy to the hotel. Two men bow as the president approaches the door of the VIP room. She and her assistant enter the room. Inside, Maru is with his sister Henaru next to a hospital bed. Shim Yunyang smiles and greets Haru. The young woman pulls her aside and asks her something is wrong since her brother won't tell her anything. Manyang quickly turns her face toward Maru. From across the room, Maru confirms he would never tell her. Maru asks his mother to lie down, but she feels uncomfortable with Shim Yunyang's presence. Yunyang approaches Hinaru and reassures her, promising to do her best to help. Their mother thanks her and asks her to please take care of her son. Yunyang holds her hand and tells her not to worry as Maram has been a great help. Suddenly, the assistant enters the room, warning that there is a huge problem. She sighs and asks who caused trouble this time. Her expression changes completely upon hearing the answer. The man reveals that Vice President Shim Yong-yu, her brother, has arrived at the hotel. Meanwhile, outside a police station, Detective Hant Sik stands before an investigation board confirming the death of manager Hong. He recalls that Hong was the main suspect in the distribution of ribs. The investigation also revealed a burned-down Japanese facility and a missing witness. Now, members of the World Organization are looking for a man. The detective stares at Maru's photo in the center of the board, questioning his role in all of this. At that moment, another detective runs into the room, saying he has new information. The younger detective shows a photo on his phone and reveals they've identified the woman with Maru. Hae-sik reacts with surprise upon learning it is Shim Yunyang, the president of the Hotel Charlotte. Back in the hotel room, Yunyang faces the situation, furious at her brother's actions. He turns around with a woman in his lap and notices his sister's presence. They watch Yunu at a table with other women, demanding the president serve him a drink. Maru leans forward and coldly asks if he should end this. She stops him, grabbing a bottle of wine and asserting her authority as president. With a smile, she decides that since the vice president wishes it, she will serve him a drink herself. The red wine begins to pour from the neck of the bottle. She pours the entire contents over her brother's head, sarcastically asking if it tastes good. Yunyang continues to pour the drink with a smile on her face. She states that she turned a blind eye when he submitted to the World Organization. And now she confronts him for openly mingling with their dogs. Sitting on a nearby sofa, Executive Director Choi Kijang takes a sip of his drink and calls her rude. Yunyang places the bottle on the table, saying she understands his bitterness since their father intended to pass the group on to her. She confronts him for coveting the president's position and bringing enemies inside while their father is still alive. With disdain, she asks if he can no longer distinguish right from wrong. She then states this is exactly why their father named her his successor. Her brother Shimin Yu mutters her name, his face dripping with wine. Suddenly, he licks his lips and says the wine is delicious, a waste to drink alone. He turns and offers the drink to one of the women beside him. Then he grabs her and tries to force her to drink from the bottle. Yunyang watches without expression as her brother shouts that his order must be obeyed without question. Suddenly, he hurls the bottle, which shatters against the wall. He approaches and accuses her of already seeing herself as the president just because of their father's appointment. With a smirk, he reminds her that their father is in a vegetative state and she can't inherit a thing until he's gone. Yunyang smiles subtly and advises him to fight all he wants but to always be careful. She glares at him and warns that no matter what he's planning, she can do the same to him. Shimong Yu points at his sister of the mocking laugh. From the sofa, director Choi Kijang lets out an exaggerated laugh. He sarcastically comments on how moving it is to see the siblings getting along so well. Yunyang smiles and tells President Yudin's dog to stay out of it as this is a Charlotte group matter. Anger, Cho Kijang crushes the glass in his hand. With a dark expression, he corrects her, emphasizing the title Madame President Yudin. He approaches and says that the young president seemed to have no manners. The moment he raises his hand, a blade appears in its path. Maru intercepts the blow, protecting Yunyang. He turns to Cho Kai-jong and tells him to leave. With a furious glare, he threatens to kill him. The two face off with Maru keeping the knife pointed at the director. Cho Kijang looks at his own hand, surprised to have been stopped and even injured in the process. He watches with a look of pure interest. As Maru glares at him, Cho Kijang concludes that he is far more interesting than he imagined. Cho Kijang accepts the challenge. With a smile, he decides it will be worthwhile to break him. He licks the cut on his hand, finding Maru an interesting guy. With a smile, he decides this will be fun. Then he charges forward, yelling that it'll be even easier to crush him. Maru blocks the attack with his knife, but his arms get caught in the process. He looks at his own wounds, not understanding how he was hit. Kai-jong taunts him, telling him to show off the skills he learned from Juno. Maru realizes, shocked, that he was cut by the director's bare hands. He remembers Hong Junho's monstrous strength. He knows true strength is great, but it doesn't compare to his master's. With a quick spin, he adjusts the knife in his hand. He faces his opponent confident he can win. Outside, hotel employees evacuate the area, apologizing for the inconvenience. Shim Yuning watches the scene, recognizing that despite being in the shadows, Choi is one of the representative forces of the world group. She watches the rapid exchange of blows, wondering if Maru can really beat him. During the clash, Choi Kijung dodges a blow and asks what that was, questioning if he also learned Choi Doyle's techniques. He attacks again, saying this won't be enough to satisfy him. Maru dodges and grabs a whiskey bottle from the table. He spins and attacks with the bottle, making Choi wonder if he also learned Baekyo's techniques. With a shout, Cho Kijung stops the blow with his hand. He uses the tool to counterattack, admitting that Maru is more interesting than he thought. Maru changes his grip on the knife, adapting quickly. He attacks with a series of fast cuts and Choi questions if he also knows Kim Yong-eun's techniques. Choi blocks the blade with his elbow, commenting that Hong Juro must have cared a lot to teach him so many different skills. He dismisses the techniques as mere tricks and delivers a series of blows to Maru's chest. The impact throws Maru backward, staggering. Cho Kong lights a cigarette, finding the whole situation absurd. He takes a drag, questioning how someone with these skills managed to defeat Chuno. As he reflects, Maru leaps onto a table to create distance. He launches himself from above, still convinced he can win even if his opponent is stronger than Director Hong. Tro looks up, disappointed, as Maru realizes he needs space to execute his real plan. Tro Kejong tries to grab him in midair, scornfully asking if this attack is all he's got. He strikes him in the side, declaring his disappointment. Maru falls to his knees, coughing from the impact of the blow. With the cigarette between his lips, Troy states that he didn't defeat Jono but that Jono led him. He concludes that Jono must have been going senile to be defeated by someone like him. Enraged, Maru screams and charges with his knife raised. CH raises a hand, saying he'll teach him what Jono couldn't. He stops Maru's attack with ease, grabbing his wrist. His hand grips Maru's chest with force. With a single motion, he hurls him through the air, declaring that this asterisk is a real skill. Maru spits as he's thrown to the ground. Troy approaches, a little surprised he withstood the blow. He wonders if it was this spirit that made Jono like him so much. With difficulty, Maru props himself up and says he's heard a lot about him, too. He taunts him, calling him one-eyed and pathetic and mentioning how well-treated he used to be. Cho Kijung's expression hardens into pure rage. He attacks violently, kicking Maru in the chest and screaming. The blow sends Maru flying back, spitting from the impact. Enraged, Choi hits him again, yelling and questioning what he knows about him. He roars that he should have been the one to defeat Chuno. As he knocks Maru to the ground, he yells that he didn't deserve it. Maru realizes he's being completely overpowered in strength, speed, experience, and skill. An image of his mother and sister in the hospital room flashes through his mind. He despairs, questioning how he can protect them if there are others as strong as Choi. Choi glares at him, asking what he should do. He prepares for a final blow, yelling for Maru to disappear if he can't get stronger. Across the room, Shim Yongyu cheers and encourages Choi. He continues, promising the company's shares, but suddenly his voice cuts out. A silhouette appears behind Yongyu, halting Choi's attack. Choi faces the mysterious figure and comments that he's been seeing him frequently lately. With the cigarette in his mouth, Detective Hae-sik tells him not to worry and to continue. He points a gun at Choi Kijung and states that he will also continue with what he planned. With the barrel of the revolver in the foreground, he warns that if Choi takes someone down in front of the police, he'll take him down too. Choi raises his hands and surrenders as other officers arrive, sarcastically claiming he was just teaching his junior a few tricks. As he's escorted away, Shim Yunu yells at the officers who decide to let him go since he isn't today's target. Detective Han turns to Choi and comments that he seems to have age. He then mentions that a kid managed to land a hit on him, and Choi looks at his own chest confused. He sees a handprint on his shirt and begins to understand. He remembers the moment he punched Maru. Then he realizes that Maru used one of his own techniques immediately after seeing it. Cho is shocked, concluding that Maru copied all the skills, finding him an extremely interesting guy. He looks back, questioning if that was why Jono liked him so much. A police officer cuffs Maru and begins to beat him his rights. As he is led away by two officers, the detective informs him that he is being arrested. Maru faces the situation with an intense gaze as he's told the charge is under suspicion. Shim Yuang approaches Maru calling his name as the police restrain him. She promises to get him out of there as soon as possible and tells him not to worry. Maru just thanks her and asks her to take care of his mother and Naru. From a distance, Choi Kijang remarks that Maru still worries about his family, noting he has a long way to go before he's like Jono. With a smile, he wonders if it wouldn't be better to just wipe out the Charlotte crew and his family. Maru then turns and confirms the man's name is Cho Kijang, saying that even if he has to die, he vows to take them all down with his own 2 hands. Troy simply replies that he can't wait for him to get out, watching as the guards lead him away. Suddenly, Shifo and his men arrive. They ask Director Shim what's happening since Maru has been arrested. Elsewhere, Yuden demands that Kim Yang go and save Maru immediately. Shim Yunyang explains that the police ignored the trouble caused by Director Shim Yang Yu and only arrested Maru, suggesting that World has insiders on the force. Yuding questions why they should save that butcher, complaining that she lost her job and was hunted down because of him. Chief's men protest, saying they'd been through a lot together and need to help him. She retorts that if he'd gone to heaven, everyone would be comfortable, but they shout back that's exactly why they need to save him even more. They reveal that it's thanks to Maru that she can eat as much as she wants at Charlotte, leaving Yudin stunned. Kim Yang touches Shim Yunyang Unk's shoulder, who asks if what they said is true. Yudin asks if she can only eat because of that butcher friend, and Shim Yunyang confirms it. She then reveals that she treated her well because she was part of Maru's group. Yudin reacts, realizing she didn't know this. One of the men asks where she's going, but Yudin shoves him aside and tells him to shut up. She then turns and declares she's going to bring Hamaru back. The scene cuts to a police station at dusk. Inside an interrogation room, Maru sits across from Detective Han. Maru considers that even though Shimyun will get him out, Choi won't just stand by. The detective comments that he's changed a lot since the first time they met. Han then questions him about being involved in both the Ribs case and another police case. He explains they found traces of blood from World Livestock employees at his house, and that his boss, Director Hong, was killed. The detective directly asks him what his relationship is with World. Putting out a cigarette, he asks Maru to say something, claiming he wants to help him, but he concludes by asking how he could possibly help someone with the face of a man who's done dozens of terrible things. Suddenly, Superintendent Anu enters the room with a tray, complaining that Detective Han hasn't fed the suspect. Ann insists that people need to eat to live, but Han just tells him to leave the food and go. He then whispers that the mayor is furious. They arrested Maru with a weapon, but no concrete evidence. Ann tells the detective to let the suspect eat while he keeps an eye on him, and Maru accepts the food. Han leaves the room, asking the superintendent to look after Maru, saying he'll be back soon. As soon as the door closes, Ann comments on what a tense guy the detective is. He turns to Maru and tells him to relax because his superior helped him get in there, and offers the food, which he says is restaurant quality, and even offers to feed him. In a meeting room, Yuding calls the situation ridiculous in front of her subordinates. She criticizes one of her men who was tasked with bringing someone back, but ended up getting arrested for a public brawl, and she scolds another of the vice president for flirting with female employees and lowering their corporate value. The chairwoman of the World Group then asks if the 2 of them want to be taken down by her own hands. She explains the trouble at the Charlotte Hotel made the media question Chairwoman Shin's abilities, making it difficult for her to act. Yudin orders Vice President Shim to take control of the board of directors, and he agrees. She also orders Director Choi Kijang not to interfere, warning that if he lets his emotions control him, he'll make mistakes. Yuding glares at him, asks if he's dissatisfied. Back in the interrogation room, Ann holds Maru and suggests they have some fun. Maru realizes the superintendent is also part of the World Group. Ann confirms he's a quick one, but then he questions what Maru can possibly do with that information. 3 men walk down a hallway that Detective N has cleared out with all the cameras turned off. Their leader states that for the next 30 minutes, no one will know what happens in there. He opens the door, commenting that this is how a powerful group should use its power, and wonders why it was so hard for Director Choi. Upon entering, the man complains about the smell of blood and asks why it's so dark. He sees a seated figure and asks if it's how Maru, wondering where Detective Ann went. The man grabs the person's shoulder and tells them to wake up. He says the chairwoman is waiting, but the person's head lolls back. It's revealed to be Detective Ann slumped in the chair. The group's leader looks to the side, shocked by what he sees. One of the men checks Anne's body and remarks that he killed a detective inside the station, noting that the body is still warm. The leader lights a cigarette and deduces he couldn't have gone far, ordering his men to find him first. He then addresses his army of men, telling them to find him before the other flies in the group get involved. On a busy street, he gives the order to cut him. Mario walks through the crowd as the voice continues giving permission to cut him in half. The only condition is that they bring him back, still breathing. Kim puts on a police uniform and wonders if she really has to do this. She puts on her cap and grumbles that if it weren't for Charlotte's buffet, she wouldn't care if he died. Walking down the hallway, she calls him annoying and questions if she's his mother, having to do everything for him. She then decides she'll just crush him and make it look like an accident. Standing in front of the last interrogation room, she announces that judgment time has arrived. Kim Young then extends her baton and leaps to deliver a blow of her baton of relentless justice. She tells him to come closer and present his head, but she finds Maru holding a lunchbox lid. He's holding on Kiju by the collar and asks how she got there. She calls him a crazy bastard for taking down a detective inside a Republic of Korea police station. Maru explains that the detective was a lackey for the World Group and that his crew was already on their way. He decided to frame them for it since he couldn't let it slide and says he's glad she arrived just in time. He then asks her to make the police believe the World Group was behind it, saying it wouldn't be difficult for someone like her. Kim Young grabs him, shouting that she came to help because of Charlotte's buffet and now he expects her to clean up his mess. Kim Young yells that she refuses even if it kills her, but stops when she hears the word Hanwoo. Marui says that's nothing compared to crossing the border and promises to buy her an all-you-can-eat unlimited 2+ Henu meal. She starts drooling, questioning if he thinks he can buy her off with capitalist temptations, and Maru adds free lifelong meals at Charlotte's buffet. Kim Young immediately shakes his hand and accepts the deal, telling him to leave everything to her. She gives a thumbs up from the doorway, stating she'll take these kinds of deals from now on, as Maru tells her to clean up and call him. He then states that he's on his way to Charlotte's. Meanwhile, the group's leader believes Maru hasn't gone far and that the other members are also looking for him. He turns to his men and orders them to find him first. The leader shoves for them to bring him back breathing, no matter his condition, and they all agree. Hiding near the ceiling, Kim Yang thinks that was a close call and that they arrived faster than she expected. She notices Captain Kim is there and laments that the person she hates most has shown up. Kim Yang considers finishing him right there, but knows she couldn't cover it up. Instead, she decides she'll just cause a commotion, so she can escape and get her Hanwoo. Suddenly, Captain Kim calls her name and strikes her. The impact throws her to the floor. Kim gets up and comments that he noticed her, but Captain Kim replies that her scent is radiating through the room. He then asks about her outfit, and if the police display, she calls him a perv and says it's amazing how he's still so disgusting. Captain Kim asks how he can stop his heart from feeling something for her, but then he notices the gun she's pointing at him. A gunshot echoes down the hall and Detective Han turns, questioning the noise. Another officer suggests something probably fell, but Han remains silent. Han turns to Officer Lee, putting a cigarette in his mouth. He then simply tells the officer to run, leaving the young man confused. The detective takes the phone from his jacket pocket and insists the officer follow him. He answers the call and introduces himself as Detective Han Tak from the Narcotics and Organized Crime Investigation Department. On the other end of the line, Hamaru identifies himself, leaving the detective shocked. Han asks how he managed to call and if the shot was his doing, but Maru already outside says there's no need and that Kim Young must be doing her job. The detective questions what he means by escaped, and Maru explains that the World Group infiltrated the interrogation room, but he survived thanks to Detective Ann. He concludes that their presence at the station means there's a spy on the police force and reveals he still doesn't trust Detective Han. Maru says he can't tell if he's a World Group blackie or a proud member of the Korean police force. He then hangs up, stating he'll tell him everything once the detective earns his trust. A bullet hole appears in the hallway ceiling. Kim fires into the air, yelling that the World Group is here to attack. Captain Kim calls her crazy and asks what she's talking about as he dodges. He then complains that he thought those things were going to fall. The captain stomps on the floor, saying that she's going to act this way. He also rushes in to attack. Kim Yang says she'd love to finish him, but she has something more important to do and hits him with a punch. She tells him to be grateful he's only getting a punch to the mouth. As she continues to strike him, she glares at him as the man says it's been a while since she did that. He states that it feels good, but then he grabs her fist mid-swing. Captain Kim holds her tightly. He says that compared to before it's not as good and throws her to the ground. On the floor, Kim Young calls him a psycho and complains that he still uses that chin punch. She then glares at him and says if he's going to hit her, he should do it right. Captain Kim raises his foot, asking if she really thinks she can get away with just that, and tries to strike as she rolls aside. She gets up quickly and calls him dirty. Then Kim Young pulls a combat dagger from her belt. She holds it firmly, saying this is going to be good. Captain Kim charges, asking what she's pulling out and declaring he's going to pull something out too. He reveals his own knife and asks if she can handle the size, but she just tells him to come get cut. Suddenly a voice shouts for them to stop. The two stop their attack, turning to see what's happening. Officer Lee appears at the end of the hall, pointing a gun and yelling, "Hands up, police!" He questions if they're fighting inside a police station and threatens to shoot if they move. Captain Kim asks if they're in America and why everyone is pointing a gun at him today. As the officer repeats the order not to move, the captain simply calls out to him. Captain Kim glares at the officer and orders him to lower his weapon. He then asks if an amateur who's never killed anyone is going to threaten him, while the officer insists he'll really shoot. A bullet hits his shoulder right in the middle of his sentence, bearing the young man to shoot. Officer Lee stands frozen, confused about what just happened. Clutching the wound, the captain yells at him for actually shooting him and asks what he would have done if he hit higher up. The young officer turns and states that he didn't shoot, but that the captain told him to. Suddenly, Detective Han appears behind him with a gun and asks what he's complaining about, leaving the officer surprised. Detective Han points his gun and asks if he wants to try that again. He says he can't believe they cause a scene in a police station in broad daylight and questions if a detective can be fooled so easily. Han then curses out the guys from World and asks if he needs to do something to wake him up. He enters the interrogation room and finds Detective An's body. Officer Lee stammers that he's dead, but Han concludes he didn't die from the attack, but from being beaten with the blunt object. He then states that these World gangsters have really crossed the line. Han asks who killed Detective An, and Kim Young raises her hands, saying she's a police officer and was stopping the man from causing more trouble. The detective points his gun at Captain Kim and concludes it was him since a cop wouldn't kill a colleague. The captain denies killing Detective An, realizing he didn't expect something like this to happen. Kim Yang then accuses him, stating that she saw a guy take down the detective and tried to get rid of her as a witness. He yells at her not to make up crap, saying that when he arrived, An was all ready, but Han cuts him off coldly, telling him to shut his mouth. The detective warns that if he says one more word, he'll pull the trigger and calls him Kim Soo-yeon. He then announces that from this moment on, Kim Soo-yeon is under arrest as a suspect in the murder of a police officer. While Kim Yang celebrates the decision the captain has taken away, yelling that he didn't kill him and that they can't arrest someone without proof. Detective Han orders Kim Yang to write a report on the situation and she agrees with a salute, but he stops her and asks a question. Han questions why her salute looks that way, sending her into a panic. He then orders them to get her and she flees, screaming that everyone in North Korea salutes that way. Kim Soy points at her and asks the detective if he believes him now that he's seen how suspicious she is. Han just points the gun at him and says he spoke more than one word. Elsewhere, Cho's team discusses absurd ways to save Maru, like using a steamroller or missiles. Suddenly, Shim Eunyoung answers a call and introduces herself. On the other end of the line, Hamaru identifies himself, leaving her surprised. Her men ask if it's Mr. Maru, how he managed to call and if he's okay. They celebrate, relieved that he escaped and that they had believed Kim Yang. Maru explains that he managed to get out of the police station thanks to Kim Yang, but she'll be a little late cleaning up the mess. He continues saying he was heading straight for the Charlotte Hotel, but he reveals that he's being followed and Eunyoung asks where he is and how many are following him. He replies that he's in a busy area near the police station and that for now there are 3 or 4 people. He continues the call explaining that he doesn't know how many more are around and that it would be dangerous to leave them to her. Then he grabs a piece of fruit from the back of a truck. He declares that he'll take care of all of them there, while Eunyoung on the phone says she'll send reinforcements immediately. But Maru hits one of the pursuers with the fruit and tells her not to, as Shim Yang, you might go to the hotel. He tries to handle the situation without drawing too much attention and grabs another man by the neck, but he warns that the place is crowded and will soon become chaotic as he slams the man against a wall. When Eunyoung asks what she should do, he replies that he'll take care of the men. He then asks her to handle crowd control and cleanup of the area. A man pulls a knife from his belt, but Hamaru stabs him and asks them to send a vehicle so he can get out of there quickly. As the man falls to the ground, Yunyang agrees to handle his requests immediately. Mario realizes they aren't attacking all at once but are coming one by one to buy time. He decides that if he runs that way for now, all the hidden people will have to move. He then prepares himself, determined to take care of all of them. He runs to return to the Charlotte Hotel and protect his family. He dodges a man who attacks him with a large blade. Mari then uses it to attack his assailant and leaves the man lying on the ground along with his axe. More pursuers corner him in a dead-end alley and order them to get him. But the alley suddenly falls silent with only a weapon on the ground. Maru then walks out of the area, injured but standing. He walks away from the fallen bodies, leaving Shim Yunyang to handle the rest. He just needs the car she sent to arrive. The window of a nearby vehicle then starts to roll down. The driver asks if he is Mr. Hamaru, and with a smile, the man tells him to get in as he'll take him to the Charlotte. His cell phone rings with a call from Shim Yunyang, and the driver comments that her timing is impeccable. Already inside the car, Maru answers and thanks Chief Shim for sending the vehicle at the perfect time. On the other end of the line, she sounds confused and asks if he's already in a car. Shim Yunyang informs him that her car is just leaving now and asks if he isn't mistaken. She asks if Mr. Maru is all right, but he just says he is and that he'll call back soon. Marvu then hangs up the phone and stares at the driver in the rearview mirror. He asks if the man is also from World, and the driver flashes a sinister smile. The man then slams on the accelerator. The car's tires screech on the asphalt and the vehicle speeds off. Back at the police station, Detective Han lights a cigarette and wonders why, of all people, it had to be Hamaru. He questions why a high-ranking executive like Director Kim would attack a low-level employee, and if Maru is such a huge threat to World. Han looks out the window and considers the possibility of a mole in the police force. Just as Maru said outside, Kim Soy complains about that crazy cop who wanted to shoot him multiple times. He first off the police station, grumbling that there's nothing that can be done. Inside the building, Detective Ham makes the same gesture and states that he has no choice but to go back to the old ways. The car speeds down a road at sunset. Maru starts to unbuckle his seat belt and asks the driver if he wants them both to die. Maru kicks the driver and yells for him to go to hell alone. He then hits him with repeated kicks. The out-of-control car skids violently down the road. Then the vehicle crashes directly into a pole. The car stops moving, smoke billowing from the impact. Mario gets out of the wrecked vehicle, holding his head and stating that was a close one. But he realizes he should be worried about something more important. He concludes that they shouldn't have known his route, but they followed him to his exact location. He then wonders if they hadn't anticipated his escape from the beginning. He touches the collar of his jacket and finds a location tracker. Realizing this is a huge problem, he concludes they were buying time to stop him from going back. Believing that Shim Yunyang is in danger, he calls Kim Yang and asks where she is. He realizes if they were just stalling him, the situation must be dangerous. Their target then can only be Shimenyang. The chairwoman of the Charlotte Hotel is in danger. He decides to call her immediately. On the phone, Yunyang asks if he's okay and Maru asks if something urgent is going on. She confirms there is and that a lot is happening at the moment. The chairwoman explains that her father's condition worsened, forcing her to go to the hospital. While they were distracted, Shim Yunju called a board meeting and they're rushing over there now. She asked him to send his location so she can send someone for him, telling him to get back safely. Maru clutches the phone, realizing that the World Group and Shim Yunju are working together. He knows that if Shim Yunyang falls, his own family will be in danger and that he needs to protect her. But looking at the tracker, he wonders how he could do that. His hand clenches into a tight fist. Then he realizes there is a way to plan. He calls Kim Yang and asks where she is now. Captain Kim Seon punches one of his men. He then kicks another subordinate, demanding to know how they failed to capture Hamaru. His men listen as he asks why the tracker isn't working. He complains that Detective Ann should have planted the device without getting caught, but one of his men announces they've recovered Maru's tracker signal. The subordinate hesitates to explain the situation and suggests the captain see for himself. Kim Sajin grabs the phone and wonders what Maru is doing. He sees the signal moving at high speed over the river on the map. Then he concludes that the kid must have gone crazy. Kim Yang furiously screams Hamaru's name. He then soars over the city using a wing suit. At the meeting point, the officer grabs him by the collar and demands an explanation. Maru states that Enyang is in danger and that he will fulfill his promise as soon as she is safe. He hands her a helmet and a suit, ready on the edge of a rooftop, and she asks what's next. Mari just tells her to run, and Kim Young complains that he's always telling her to do that. She leaps off the building, questioning if her life is a joke to him. While gliding through the city, the officer swears that one day she will kill him. The two of them approach the hospital. In the room, Shim Yunyang tells the doctors they had assured her that her father was fine the day before. Her father lies unconscious on the bed wearing an oxygen mask. The chairwoman asks if anything unusual happened or if anyone different showed up. Then one of the doctors remembers that Vice Chairman Shim Yunju was there for a visit. Yunyang realizes he used her father's health as an excuse to call the meeting. One of her bodyguards informs her it's time to go, and she agrees. As they leave, she concludes that his plan is to take over the board. She tries to open the room's door, stating she needs to get to headquarters immediately, but the door is locked. Her men confirm they can't open it, and one of them points to the smoke seeping in from underneath. On the other side, her bodyguards are down as masked men try to seal the door and call for help. In the meeting room, Shim Yunju complains that the CEO is late for her own meeting, considering it grounds for disqualification. With his feet on the table, he asks why they should wait for someone who's late. He then insists that everyone start the meeting immediately, but one of the directors purrs that perhaps they should wait a little longer since the meeting was called so suddenly. Other board members comment that Shim Yunyang isn't usually late and wonder if something might have happened. Vanju tells them to proceed, stating that his presence is enough and that they don't need her. A director confronts him, questioning how he can act that way after causing so many problems and the drop in stock prices. He also accuses him of rumors that he's trying to sell the group to World. The man calls him a troublemaker and Unju lunges at him. He grabs the director by the collar, saying that hurt his feelings, and admits to being a troublemaker. Then he questions him about saying behind his back that he was handing the group over to World. Unju turns to the table and claims that Unyang is the one getting close to World, not him. He declares he's the only one killing himself to save the group and asks why no one sees it. The other directors call him shameless and tell him to get a grip since he lost the succession dispute. Nanju clicks his tongue in disapproval. He yells at the directors to shut up if they don't know what's really going on. He asks if they even know who's really ruining the group, stating he's the only one who has kept the group afloat with Charlotte Chemicals. He then questions what Shim Yunyang has ever done, accusing her of contributing nothing. Before he can finish saying she's the real culprit, the door to the room bursts open with a crash. One of the directors is thrown into the meeting room. Captain Kim Soy and his men arrive, confirming that the tracker signal led them there. He enters the room and asks if they're sure Hamaru was there, seeing only a bunch of old men. Then the captain suggests he might have escaped and orders them to check the signal again, but his subordinate shows him the phone, insisting the signal still indicates he's there. The captain concludes that Maru must be hiding nearby and orders them to search everything. Outside, Maru clings to the building's wall while Cyan complains about his stealthiness. A man opens a closet door and is surprised to find someone inside. The man inside the closet stares back at him. The captain recognizes Vice Chairman Shim Yunju and asks what he's doing there. Shim Yunju explains he was in a meeting, and Kim Soyan reveals that President Yu sent him to take control of the board. The directors accuse him of being a traitor and a puppet for World, confirming the rumors were true. One of them calls him trash for bringing the enemy into their company. Then Anju blames Kim for everything, but the captain just asks if he needs help. The vice chairman orders his men to forget the plan and destroy everything. In the hospital room, Shim Yunyang is collapsed on the floor amidst the smoke. She realizes it was all Shim Yunju's plan to get rid of her. He even went so far as to involve her father. The chairwoman struggles to get up from the floor. She understands that they are coming. Their goal is to eliminate this once and for all. The door to the room begins to shake from the impacts outside. She wonders if this is her end, but a voice in front of her says it's not. The same voice states that nothing is over yet. Shimayang looks at the outstretched hand before her and recognizes him. Maru standing in the doorway states that the end is something they will decide. The heart monitor shows stable vital signs. A doctor reports that thankfully the chairman's condition has stabilized, but he warns that due to his deteriorating health. They don't know how much time he has left. Yunyang wonders how someone could kill her own father for the chairman's position. Marv asks if she plans to give up on everything, and she replies that it's already too late. He then assures her that he'll take care of her family no matter what happens. Holding her face, he tells her to pull herself together as he has trusted her all this time. He states that he'll do whatever it takes to protect her. He then asks her not to give up and to believe in him. He says that if they're going to the board meeting, she better dress for the occasion. She asks how the outfit looks and he replies that it should do. While adjusting his suit, she remarks that the meeting must be over by now. She then suggests they should perhaps focus on the next shareholders' meeting, but Margaret reassures her, saying that if everything went as planned, the board meeting hasn't even started yet. Yunyang questions him about his plan as a voice from the hallway orders to finish everyone off. In the meeting room, Shim Yunju's men are attacked. Maru then reveals that he had already sent Kim Yang to the location. On the floor, one of the company directors lies fallen. Shim Yunju approaches the body and asks if the man is really dead. He then argues with Captain Kim, who reminds him that he ordered his men to get them out of there. Amid the chaos, Kim Soyeon orders his men to find Hamaru as he must be somewhere. Anju concludes that the situation will create huge problems unless everyone there is sent to the afterlife. So he decides the solution is to take down everyone in the room. He approaches Kim So-yan and suggests a civilized conversation. Then Anju warns him about the consequences if he tells Chairman Yu that he ruined everything. The captain asks if that's a threat, but Anju replies that it's a proposal. He then offers to help get rid of Executive Director Choi. Shim Yunju explains that if he becomes the chairman, he can easily help him, so calls him Chairman Shim and shakes his hand, asking what needs to be done. One of the company directors lets out a scream. Then Kim So-yeon kicks him, sending him flying through the meeting room window. The man falls past Kim Yang, who is on the outside of the building. She clings to the wall, watching as others continue to fall. Her position allows her to look into the room, trying to understand what is happening. Meanwhile, Shim Yanju assures the remaining directors they will get home safely if they listen to him. He then shows an authorization form, asking them to support him with their shares and sign it. But one of the directors confronts him, questioning the document's validity. Dunju approaches and places a hand on the man's head, who asks what he's doing. He then grabs the director's hair forcefully. Next, he slams him against the table to show what happens when he loses control. He yells at the other directors that he has nothing to lose and wouldn't mind finishing them all off. Looking at the man on the floor, he remarks that people never listen to him. He then orders Kim Sion to throw all the directors out, and the captain prepares to obey, but one of the men kneels and begs for his life, promising to sign the document. A director kneels and pleads with Yanju, reminding him that he treated him like family since childhood. Banju reflects that he was kind as a child but questions his current attitude. Then he orders him to be thrown out and Kim So hurls him away. Another director named Kang tears up a document and defies him. He states he isn't afraid and wouldn't have joined Charlotte if he were. Nanju congratulates him on his boldness, calling him his father's right-hand man, but then he asks him who would get his shares if he died. He continues threatening them if they also refuse to cooperate. Director Kang finally gives in and agrees to the terms. He signs the document, admitting he wasn't thinking clearly. Near the window, Kim Sajin complains that he wouldn't have to deal with Yanju if he had caught Hamaru. He looks at his phone, which still shows Maru's location, and wonders where he is. So concludes that unless the tracker is broken, his target must be nearby. He consoles himself, thinking he won't get in trouble for losing Maru since he helped the vice chairman. As he looks down to deal with the bodies, he is surprised to see Maru on the floor below. Kim So-yan looks down through the broken window and wonders what that is. He realizes someone is there and can't believe his eyes. He then yells Hamaru's name. Then he reaches out to grab her. Stomping down, he calls her a rat. He pulls her into the room, asking where she thinks she's going. Kim Yang falls hard to the floor and Su Yin remarks that she must have strong arms. He says she should have stayed hidden and that now she won't be disappearing again. Then he wonders how he should deal with her. Shim Yunju approaches and asks if he found Hamaru. He remarks that everything is practically settled now, but he's hit by a sudden kick. Kim Sion, the true target of the attack, turns around in surprise. He looks at the newcomer, questioning what is happening. Hamaru appears at the room's entrance holding a knife. So then realizes the person he captured wasn't his real target. Kim Soy questions who the person in front of him is as they slowly start to get up. He looks on in shock, glancing between the figure in the suit and the real Hamaru at the door, wondering if there are two of them. Kim Soy wonders aloud if there are two Hamuras. He then questions if the man standing at the door is the real one. If that's the case, he looks to the side and wonders who the helmeted figure is. He then smirks and decides it doesn't matter. Then he moves forward, stating that he just needs to kill them both. Maru readies himself, concluding that this must be the group's leader. He charges, planning to finish him off quickly so he can deal with the board of directors, but something unexpected happens. Kim Young hits Kim Soon with a punch and calls him a capitalist. The captain falls to the ground. Shim Yun calls them cowards for their surprise attack. He then orders his men to get them all and they charge forward. Lying on the floor, So Yun says he now understands who hit him. He identifies her as Kim Young, not Hamaru. Kim Soo-vian prepares to attack but is stopped by Shim Yanju. Dunju reminds him that the priority now is to capture Hamaru quickly. The captain gets angry, questioning who he thinks he is to give him orders. Shim Yunju then reminds him of the promise he made to make him the chairman. He concludes that if Maru is here, his father and Yunyang must be dead, but a voice interrupts him. A figure enters the room and asks who he was talking about. Both Yanju and Su-yun turn in surprise, recognizing the voice. Shim Yunyang enters the room and her brother asks how she got there. She states she's not going anywhere while he's alive. Lunju Layman's losing the chance to get rid of them both at once. The chairwoman approaches the directors and asks if they're all okay. They express relief at seeing her and ask about the chairman's health. Her brother also approaches and asks about their father. He wants to know if their father is still alive. Yunyang then slaps him and calls him insane. Shim Yunju questions her about their father and states that she won't get any help anyway. Holding the document, Eun-yang confronts him for using their father for something like this. She then asks if he's given up on being human. Her brother accuses her of not understanding the situation and claims he has already convinced the board of directors. He continues to gloat, but his expression suddenly changes. His sister then snatches the document from his hands. She reeks it up, questioning if he's campaigning with a paper that hasn't even been legally registered. Shim Yanju admits he didn't know about the legal registration requirement. He turns to Captain Kim and suggests a small change to their contract with the promise of becoming vice chairman if he does this. Su-yin moves toward Yunio, but she stares him down, remaining motionless. Then he's intercepted by a combined attack from Maru and Kim Yang. Kim Yang complains about everything she's been through because of him. Maru then instructs her to evacuate Shim Yunyang and the others first. He turns to Kim Sayan, declaring that he now has business to settle with him. Shim Yunju yells for Captain Kim to go after the ones fleeing, but Kim Yang tells him to shut up. Kim Soyan takes out his knife and says he doesn't need to be told. He then charges, shouting that he would have torn her to pieces anyway, but a voice tells him not to look away. Marva blocks his path, declaring that he is his opponent. As she leaves, Yunyang asks Mr. Maru to be careful. So-yun asks if he'd rather go first than attacks. He then tests Manager Hong's skills with a strike. The blade slashes close to Maru. Maru concludes that because he was focused on his fists, he couldn't avoid it. He decides he can't let his opponent attack first, so he rushes forward and hits the captain with a kick. He knocks So to the ground and readies for the final blow. But the captain blocks the attack with his arm, calling him a gangster. So is surprised Maru knew that move and landed a clean hit. Kim So pushes off the ground into a kick. He identifies himself as the strategy captain of the world group as Maru dodges the attack. Then he lands a direct hit, but the captain realizes his attack was stopped. Maru managed to catch his leg in midair. He then uses the momentum to slam Su-yun to the ground. The captain calls him arrogant. Maru moves in. Then he hits him with a series of rapid blows. So-yun falls to the ground defeated as Shim Yunju shouts for him. Yunju questions how he could receive the vice chairman position being so weak. He regrets not asking senior director Choi for help. So-yun tells him to shut up and hits him with a kick. Shim Yunju falls to the floor unconscious. The captain gets up complaining that his ears started to hurt from all the noise. Maru watches Kim Sound get up, not understanding what's happening. He wonders how So-yun can move like that after taking so much damage. He realizes his opponent's indifferent posture isn't something a normal person could pull off. So Maru stares at him and asks if he's incapable of feeling pain. Kim So cracks a wide smile and confirms his suspicion. Maru watches him, wondering how he can move like that after so many injuries. He notices that his opponent's indifferent posture is not something a normal person could pull off, so he approaches and asks if Kim So-yum is unable to feel pain. With a wide grin, the captain confirms his opponent's suspicion. He declares that the prize for figuring that out is a coffin and lunges forward. Maru concludes that if he doesn't feel pain, he'll be a difficult opponent to handle, but that doesn't mean there isn't a way to defeat him, so he goes on the attack. He tries to cut his opponent, but the blow is blocked. So questions him, asking if he's the first one to try that. He then disarms him and throws him away. The captain comments that he heard Maru defeated Manager Hong and was looking forward to seeing his skills. Then he kicks him, asking if that was all he had to show. He approaches, stating he doesn't have time for this, so grabs him, saying he also needs to give Yang a taste of his power. Then he throws Maru aside, shouting that he needs her. On the ground, Maru says that's why he needs to be defeated. Then Kim Son attacks him with a heavy strike. The impact leaves him on the floor. Meanwhile, the head of security for the Charlotte Hotel, Bihapin, greets the chairwoman. He reports that he's already taken care of the people on that floor, but there might still be enemies on the upper floors. The security chief says he called for a helicopter and asks everyone to follow him to the rooftop. But Yunyang hesitates, stating that if they leave now, it will be difficult for Mr. Maru to escape. Bihugjin insists that her safety is the priority and that Maru asked him to protect her. Kim Yang reassures her, guaranteeing that her comrade is the type to return even from hell. The chairwoman finally agrees and they prepare to leave. As they go up the stairs, she asks Bahub Chin to promise to bring Maro back safely. Back to the fight, Maro presses a piece of wood against Kim Soyeon's neck. He concludes that even if his opponent doesn't feel pain, he's still human. Maru compares him to a pig, stating that he's not much different from one. He then says that pigs have a thick layer of fat and don't go down easily unless you hit their vital spots. Maru hits him in the head with a spinning kick. Kim Sodian states that he's not interested in him as common damage only makes pigs wilder. Maru picks up a hammer and mentions the rule for slaughtering pigs. He then strikes his opponent several times with the hammer. Maru is surprised by his adversary's resilience. So admits that it actually made him dizzy. He gets up and faces Maru. Then the captain says he should have prepared a tonkatsu hammer and attacks him with his knife. Maru concludes that things will get worse if the pig goes into a frenzy. He decides not to aim for a weak spot, but to restrain his movements instead, so he hits his opponent's thigh with the hammer. Kim So expresses surprise that he knows how to use his brain. He questions how Maru can exert so much force with a toy like that. Maru then incapacitates his arm and then his leg. The captain admits that he's tough but that it's not over yet. Kim Soyeon charges forward, shouting that it wasn't enough to stop him. Maru understands that there's no right answer and that he can't defeat him with this, so he runs towards his opponent. Kim So asks if he still has an ace up his sleeve and claims he's starting to like him. He hits his adversary's chest, concluding that no physical trauma will likely work, but he knows his opponent is still just a human being. He then decides that if he can pull it off, he might have a chance. Maru looks at his hand and realizes his strength is far inferior to the original master of that technique. Even so, he attacks with the move once more. The impact sends Kim Sound flying backward. Maru steps back as his opponent falls to the ground. He looks at his own hands, realizing the heavy toll the technique takes on his body, but Sao makes him turn his head in surprise. On the floor, Kim So-yeon comments that it's the first time he's felt his body tremble. He then gets out, stating that the feeling is splendid, while Maru can't believe he withstood that. Kim So-yeon rushes forward, shouting that now he deserves a taste of his power, and Maru realizes he'll be hit if the fight continues like this. But the captain stops suddenly and spits. He then falls to his knees and collapses on the floor, completely defeated. Down, Kim Hyun mutters about his power and Maru expresses his relief. He concludes that if he hadn't used that technique, his opponent wouldn't have been a huge problem. Bihin approaches and greets him as Mr. Amaru. Maru returns to the bodyguard, questioning if he wasn't just an extra. The security chief states that they need to leave this place immediately. Outside the building, Choi Kai-jong and the World Roots forces arrive in large numbers. On the rooftop, a helicopter is already waiting for their evacuation. On the phone, Shim Yunyang comments that they brought not only Shim Yanju but also director Kim. She then asks Yudin if she's suggesting they start a war. The World Group's chairwoman replies that although her building was empty, they crossed the line by attacking it directly. She continues, mentioning that they even defeated their executives in public. Then demands that she take responsibility for all of this unless she wants things to end that way. Over the phone, Yudin reassures Chairwoman Shim. She states that the cleanup has already begun. As they go up the stairs, Maru asks if Shun Yunyang is okay, but Bihin informs him that she's already left. The World Group's chairwoman reveals that it's not just about the Charlotte Group's headquarters, but also her hotel. She then promises that they will take responsibility and clean everything up. They will make it as if nothing ever happened, as if nothing had ever even existed there before. In front of a huge building, a security guard complains about having to work overtime. Manager Lee Kaeyoung announces it's already 8:48:00 p.m. and they won't be getting paid for the night shift. He emphasizes that they're really not making anything from this, so he orders everyone to finish the job quickly so they can go home, but the men suddenly stop as they enter the building. The manager asks why no one is there and warns his team not to let their guard down. He then orders them to search everywhere as they might be walking into an ambush. One of his subordinates shouts that the place is also empty, but the manager insists it's impossible for them to be gone. The manager kicks a door open but finds no one there either. He then concludes that they all just ran away and abandoned the base. He realizes they really took everything and just left. Annoyed complains that they'll have to work all night until a subordinate calls him over with a problem. He turns and warns them not to talk to him unless it's about the location of Charlotte's people. The man then reports that all the exit doors are locked and the elevators aren't working. The manager finally understands that Charlotte's people weren't avoiding a fight, trapping them instead. In the next instant, a huge explosion engulfs the base of the building. Kai-jong stares down at Kim So-yun on the floor, finding it illogical that he ended up like this after everything he said to the president. He then questions him for ending up this way and adds that he couldn't even handle Han Maru. Kai-jon then notices the wound on Soo-yun. He moves closer to get a better look at the injury. With a wide grin, he admires what he sees. He then realizes the kid is improved and that their next fight will be fun. Meanwhile, Maru asks Bahakshin that Shim Yunyang is okay, but he replies that she's already left for the hotel in Busan with her family. Maru questions why they would go to Busan, but Hu Chin just states that they're going there too. He explains that the world group already controls most of Su. So President Shim has been setting up base in Busan lately. That way, even the world group will have a hard time breaking in. Mario agrees to go to Busan and they run towards a door. When the car is waiting at the Charlotte Hotel in Busan, President Shim walks through the lobby. She asks about the location in Su, and her subordinate informs her that it has been activated, and they're making it look like the world group's doing. Shim Yunyang questions her subordinate about the location of the Japanese. He informs her that the people from Do Ranch are on their way, but it might take them a while to arrive. The president then orders him to hurry them up as the situation is dire. Suddenly, a young woman named Hanaru hugs her, saying she missed her. Naru comments that the hotel is great and that she hopes her brother doesn't show up. Yunyang then asks where Kim Yang is, who is supposed to be with them. The girl replies that Ms. Kim had some business to take care of and will be a little late on a helicopter. Kim Yang reacts to what she just heard. She questions if they're really going to the Charlotte Hotel in Ben and not the one in Su. One of the men explains that they need to regroup at the Busan location to prepare a counterattack. Yudian adds that they won't be able to go to Su for a while, so this is the best option for now. Kim apologizes to President Shim and opens the helicopter door. An officer asks if she's trying to get disposed of like Captain Kim, but she replies that she left something behind in Su. She then jumps out of the aircraft, shouting that she needs to get what she forgot. Now in free fall, she says her goodbyes and tells them not to worry as she'll see them in Busan. Choi Kai-jong holds Vice President Shin Yoon-ju and comments on his pitiful state, stating that the president will be very disappointed. He defends himself, saying he was doing fine until Captain Kim tried to find Han Maru with a cell phone and messed everything up. Kai-jon grabs the device and realizes it's tracking Maru's location. Looking at the screen, he's surprised by the tracker's speed. Meanwhile, firefighters struggle to put out the fire of the hotel. One of them prepares to go in, mentioning that witnesses heard screams but the rooms were empty. He adds that the employees weren't there either, but suddenly they spot something. Lee Kaeyoung emerges from the rubble, surprised that Charlotte's people blew up their own building. A firefighter tries to help him, but he refuses, saying his health insurance won't cover the treatment. He complains that he has to worry about his health while working like this. Then his phone rings and he answers. Speaking with Director Choi, the director informs him they found Ham Maru and orders him to take reinforcements to the location, leaving Kian confused. He realizes he almost died and is already being sent on another mission. Annoyed, he yells at the director for not even listening to him. The scene then shifts to a quiet residential building at night. Kim Yang sneaks down a hallway. Suddenly a hand strikes out and knocks her down. An old woman scolds her, asking why a grown woman would go out dressed like that. Upon entering the room, the men greet her and comment that she's always lucky when it comes to food. A young man then offers to make a serving of ramyang just for her. She sits at the table and declares that capitalist ramyang is the best invention of southern minds, but the old woman tells her to take a shower, saying she won't eat if she doesn't. Kim Yang runs out of the room, promising to be right back so they don't touch her food. Back again, she announces she'll be out for a while after eating, making the men speculate if she has a boyfriend. Inside her room, music plays while her clothes are thrown on the floor. On top of her bag, there's an old photograph. The photo shows a younger version of herself next to another woman. Fresh from her shower, she runs back down the hall, calling for her comrades. She then announces that she has completed her shower mission and finally enters the room, asking them to bring her ram. On the floor, one of the fallen men complains that his stomach is growling. Another comrade also calls out for his friends. Lee Kaeyoung, sitting in a chair, complains that Director Choi said it was Ham Maru, but it's actually Kim Yang. He then reflects that this is his life, having a director who doesn't even check the facts before sending him on a mission. He puts out his cigarette in a bowl of ram, lamenting that he has to fight Kim Yang after nearly dying. Suddenly he stands up and tells Yang not to get the wrong idea, as he didn't defeat these people and just arrived. A group of armed men surrounds Kim Yang, and Kainam explains that they were the ones who did this. He adds that they do their job well, but they're very strict, something she should understand since she used to be one of them. Kim Yang starts to say that it's all just part of the job, but she cuts him off, telling him to be quiet. Lee Kaeyoung tells Kim Yang not to be mad, insisting he wasn't the one who did it. He explains that just like the others, he was only sent by Director Choi, so he suggests they go their separate ways since he didn't come to capture her. A small gun drops into Kim Mang's hand. She then turns and points the gun. In a swift move, she attacks the men around her. She continues, disarming one of them with a single blow, then she moves in at point-blank range. The last man falls to the ground from the impact. Lee Kaeyoung watches the scene and remarks that she must be really pissed off. He stares her down as she approaches him. He then asks if they can stop now since she's defeated all her enemies. Kaeyoung tries to explain that he almost felt getting there but cuts himself off. She simply starts eating the ram that was on the table. He then realizes she was just hungry. Lee Kaeyoung comments that she should have just said so, but questions why she eat ram with cigarettes. He then offers to buy her a tasty meal when they get out, asking in return that she pretends she never saw him. Kim Yang her gun and states that there's nothing in the world, and then points the gun at him, finishing that nothing is as tasty as the ramium from this place. In an alley outside, the rain pours down heavily. A group of men runs through, yelling that she's wounded and couldn't have gone far. One of them, injured, swears he'll take her down as soon as he finds her, but he can't go on and collapses to the ground, feeling cold and hungry. He then wonders if this is how it's all going to end, and laments that if so, he'd like to eat a bowl of hot ramen to pass on with no regrets. Back at the apartment, the old lady and the other men wonder how long Kim Yang is going to sleep. One of them comments it's been over 20 hours and he thought she would have woken up by now. They watch her sleep, and one of the men suggests she must have some story behind her. The young man holding the ram decides that since she's still sleeping, they'll have to eat by themselves. But upon hearing the word ramium, Kim Yang finally wakes up. Sitting on her bed, Kim Yang eats ramen while the other residents comment that she should be the one making lunch. During dinner, the old lady serves a meat dish and warns that whoever eats the most should be the last to get a serving. One of the men laughs and says that's just capitalism, advising the other to start a revolution if he's upset. Two other guys assure her they'll still save food for Yang, even if she eats a lot. That place where she could laugh comfortably was her home. But back in the present, she points the gun at Lee Kaeyoung and accuses him of breaking everything. She then strikes near his feet. Haeyoung hits her with a punch, yelling that he already told her he didn't do anything. He grabs her face, complaining that he almost died and hasn't even been treated yet. She retaliates with a knee strike, stating that she won't be so upset if she just defeats all of them. He doubles over from the impact of the blow, then he glares at her. Kim Yang hits him on the head with the butt of her gun. The blow throws him backward. He then complains that working overtime is so annoying. Kim Yang points the gun at him and warns that if he's not going to listen. Lee Kaeyoung picks up his tool, talking about the weather. She asks if he really thinks she'll fall for that talk, but Yu replies there's nothing he can do if she doesn't believe him. He then looks at his watch and complains that he hates working 2 days straight without sleep. Kaeyoung then declares they'll finish this in 10 seconds. A black car speeds down a highway. Inside the vehicle, a man confirms that Mr. Lee has arrived, checking the location on his phone. Kaijong informs Shim Yanju that Shim Yunyong went to Busan, which he considers bad news, but explains that as he knows from experience, that place is really hard to conquer. He describes it as a fortress built with defense in mind, one that held out until the very end during the last war. Worry, he wonders what they'll do, as it will be difficult if she stays there. But Kong smiles and tells him not to worry, suggesting they turn the tables. He explains that if she went into that place, it means she'll have no way out. Back to the fight, Lee Kaeyoung attacks Kim Yang with his weapon. She dodges and shoots him at point-blank range. Lee Kaeyoung deflects her shot with his hand while blocking her attack with his baton. She then kicks him in the chest, forcing him back. Kim Young seizes the chance and hits him on the head with the butt of her gun. He recovers and attacks with a blow that cracks the floor, but she manages to dodge it. The impact of the blow throws her backward just as time runs out. She collects herself and says that 10 seconds wasn't enough. Lee Kang yells that now he's really getting off work. He advances toward her and she challenges him to bring it on. Kim Young yells that he wouldn't let her leave even if she killed him. He replies that he'd rather sell his soul than let her escape. Suddenly, his expression changes. Kim Young throws herself backwards, shattering the apartment window. She then says that if he wants to get off work so badly, she'll let him rest forever. An attack raises Kaeyoung's face. Outside, a blond man smirks amidst the chaos. An explosion lights up the night coming from one of the apartments in the residential building. Shim Yoonju gets out of the car and asks if Manager Lee was responsible for the explosion, finding the method too flashy, but Troy Kong notes that such a messy method isn't Manager Lee's style. He then realizes something is wrong. Amidst the frightened crowd, Kim Young uses the confusion to escape down an alley. Her escape leads her to the entrance of a veterinary hospital. A group of armed men runs past the location, calling Kim Young a traitor and ordering everyone to find her. Inside the hospital, a veterinarian and his assistant are startled by the noise outside. Wounded Kim Yang suddenly appears and gestures for them to be silent. She then tells them to stay quiet while she makes a call. A trail on the ground leads to a dark alley. Cho Kijung stops and observes the area. He follows the stains which lead to a veterinary hospital. Kong approaches the building's entrance. Inside the hospital, the trail of blood continues across the floor. The veterinarian and his assistant are startled by his presence and ask if he's there for an appointment. Kajin then asks if a woman was there and demands to know where she is. The assistant explains that she received treatment, grabbed her shoes, and left through the front door. He finds this strange as there was no one outside. Suddenly, Kong spots a van and orders them to chase it. In the van, Hamaru asks Bahukjin what happened and why he's still in Sue. He reminds him that he was supposed to go to Busing with Shim Yoonyoung. In the back seat, Kim Young explains that she needed to take care of some things for the next day. Maru asks what she needed to do, but she tells him not to worry. She just tells him to wait and see and that he'll have to thank her if his life is saved because of it. A winding road cuts through the darkness of the night. Several cars at high speed follow the same path. The fleet then arrives at its destination, the Charlotte Hotel in Busan. Inside a ballroom, several men in suits are gathered at round tables. Shim Yoonyoung greets Director Jen, thanking him for coming, but he states it was his duty to be there. He then expresses his concern, saying he doesn't believe they have enough personnel to face the world group. The chairwoman reassures him, stating they have a way to replenish their power. Suddenly, Chairman Takanaka Yoshinori interrupts them, yelling that Hamaru defeated 3 of his men and set his factory on fire. He continues, explaining that Manager Hong was supposed to cover the damages, but Maru caused trouble as well. Yoshinori then demands to know where he is. Bihin approaches and informs him that Mr. Maru is on his way, asking him to take a look at something first. He then hands him an envelope stating that it should be sufficient compensation for what Mari did. The chairman of Dohara Ranch opens the envelope, realizing it's certainly not money. He then asks what he's supposed to do with these documents, demanding his money back. Shim Yoonyoung calmly advises him to look first before they talk, assuring him he won't regret it. Takanaka Yoshinori questions her confidence and asks if they're real estate documents, but upon reading the papers, he is shocked and his men ask what's wrong. Shim Hunyoung then reveals that it's proof the World Group embezzled money from their transactions with Do Ranch. With this information, she extends her hand and proposes they renew their alliance. Meanwhile, on the road, Henaru asks if it's safe to keep driving this van. Bihin reassures him, saying they'll switch cars as soon as they're out of the World Group's area. Suddenly, a car hits them from behind, throwing everyone forward. The vehicle that hit them speeds up and prepares for another impact. Maro complains that this is what happens when you're an easy target. The van is quickly surrounded by several cars from the World Group. One of the vehicles then hits them on the side. Behind yells that they're getting out of there immediately. He then presses a button and tells everyone to hold on. The van starts to swerve, hitting the cars surrounding it. A new car appears behind them, and Hyujin says he knew he could trust Mr. Kyon Hoen. Bihin warns that they aren't safe yet as their pursuers will catch up in no time. Kim Yang reassures him, telling him not to worry as she loads her weapon. She then kicks the back door of the van open, stating that she had already anticipated this might happen. Lying on the floor of the vehicle, she explains that's why she brought her equipment. The drivers of the pursuing cars look at the van, confused. Kim Yang takes careful aim and fires. The shot hits the tire of one of the cars dead-on. The vehicle with the flat tire loses control and skids on the road. It then collides with the car next to it. The crash blocks the way and she asks her colleague what he thought. She then declares that was the People's Blitz attack. Kim Young turns and says she told them they'd need the gun. A third car slams into the back of the crash vehicles, but the van is forced to a stop, blocked by 3 other cars. She then gets out of the vehicle, complaining about these guys. Kim Young aims her rifle and yells that they all should have been revolutionized. Suddenly, she notices something moving beside her. Hamaru leaps from the van onto the roof of one of the cars, surprising her with his move. Inside the vehicle, one of the henchmen attacks the driver. The man screams as he's attacked in the neck. Maru then hits the driver with another blow. Seeing what happened, the other men get out of their cars, yelling that Maru is there. Kim Young opens fire on them before they can react. Maru then leans on the car door and comments on their recklessness. He approaches her and states that she owes him her life now. He then asks how they were followed, but she assures him she threw away the location tracker. They get into one of the enemy's cars and Bae Huk Jin comments that while they no longer need to switch vehicles, they won't be able to drive this one for long. Suddenly, a voice on the car radio calls for number 7, asking for a location report. The voice then reports that they've just blocked all roads to Busan and that Kim Young is heading for the roadblock. They are shocked to learn that the roads are completely blocked, leaving only sea or air routes. Behin laments that the world route will be watching the skies, and there are no ships to Busan, suggesting they could try swimming, but Hamaru interrupts him, saying there's a solution. He then states with conviction that there is a way. Maru explains that he has a friend at Insin Bay. He adds that this friend has a boat. At the docks, Behin asks if the huge cruise ship is the boat he was talking about and who his friend might be. Maru says no and points down, indicating another boat from a smaller speedboat. Someone waves at them. A woman calls out to Maru, and Kim Young asks if that beautiful woman is his friend. He then clarifies that his friend is the guy waving from the middle of a group of women. Kim Kazun greets him, saying it's been a while since they've seen each other. The women around Kim Kazun beg him to stay and have fun, but he waves them off, saying his best friend is waiting. Hamaru greets him, remarking that he never changes. Kazun then runs towards him, shouting his name. Kim Young watches the scene in silence. He runs right past Maru and stops in front of her, asking if she's been well. Kazun then drapes his shirt over her shoulders, saying the Seebs isn't good for her health. He takes her hand and asks for her name, but Kim kicks him and tells him to get lost. She knocks him to the ground and asks Maru if she can break him as he cries out for help. Behind warns that they don't have time for this and need to apologize to his friend so they can leave quickly. Maru just replies that there's no need for an explanation. From the ground, Kisun suggests they just head to Busan like this. In a lobby of the Charlotte Hotel in Busan, the mission briefing concludes. On a podium, Shim Eunyoung emphasizes one last thing, asking them to fight to live, not to die. She then displays data on the big screen, revealing that the power difference between them and the world group is threefold. Facing her allies, she states that the more intense the fight, the greater the damage. President Kim Dong-ho reminds everyone that they are the future of Charlotte. Then, President Min Chang still questions the point of a victory that results in losing that future. President Takanaka Yoshinori advises them not to die, leaving their honor behind, but to live to enjoy the glory. President Min then asks for permission to ask a question, and Shim Eunyoung grants it. He questions her directly about their real chances of defeating the world group. She replies that if they fight desperately without a strategy, the chances are 10%. If the executives before her follow the plan, the chances rise to 50%. But she continues explaining that if everyone understands the strategy and acts organically instead of just following orders, then the chances of victory reach 80%. And she says she's confident they can win. The executives in the front row stare at her. One of them begins to clap slowly. Soon everyone stands up and applauds, declaring they will bet everything on her with that determination. The entire room echoes with applause for Director Shim. She watches everyone with a faint smile on her face. On the deck of the boat, Kim Young looks at an old photograph under the moonlight. The night wind blows through her hair as she stares at the image. Hamaru approaches and asks if it's a family photo. He then asks if the woman in the picture is her mother and if she's in North Korea. Kim Yang replies that she doesn't know if her mother is alive or dead. She explains that when she arrived in South Korea, she thought she had found people who look like her mother, but she clenches her teeth and remembers they were all no good. Maru then opens a can of a drink without saying a word. He offers the can to her and simply tells her to drink. She takes the drink and says they should take the chance to rest as they won't be able to when they reach Busan. They toast and she thanks him for the words of comfort, apologizing for making him work all day. As the boat cuts through the sea, she asks where the snacks are. Inside the vessel, someone's shadow climbs a ladder. Bihin asks Kim Kazan if it's okay, that he's not piloting the yacht. Kiss replies that it's fine as the autopilot is on and there's something more important to do. Bihin points at Kim Kazan and asks what his deal is. He presses him, questioning how he knew they were going to Busan if Maru had revealed the destination. Kazan smiles and states that from the way he talks, he must be from the Charlotte group, but Kuchin just tells him to answer the question. He then holds up 3 fingers. Kazun explains that by knowing 3 things you can figure out everything. First, that Maru used to work for the World Group. Second, the rumors of war between the Charlotte Group and the World Group. And third, the surveillance on Su's roads and airports. He continues deducing that Maru got caught in the middle of the war and that the situation is dangerous since Kim Yang is injured and they need to get out of Seoul with the roads and sky block. The only option is the sea, and since there are no regular routes from Insin to that area, the only alternative left is Busan, which is why Maru called him since he has a boat. But Kizun expresses his confusion, saying that Maru doesn't seem like the type of person to get involved in something so big. Hu-chin then puts away his gun and prepares to ask one last question. He wants to know why, even knowing everything, Kasun is still helping Maru since the risk is so high. Kiss starts to answer, saying that Maru is. He then corrects himself and says that Maru's family. With a smile, he reveals that they are his benefactors. Bihin enters the boat's cabin and approaches Kim Kisun. Behind him, Han Maru asks if his doubts about his friend have been cleared. Hyuk Jin then asks about his background. Maru explains that at 13 he became the youngest chess master in Asia, completed his NBA at 17, joined Mensa at 18, and was published in Nature at 20. He then adds that Kizun is now a fund manager who handles assets for important people. Back on the road, one of the World Group's goons is lying on the ground. Shikjung arrives at the scene and asks about all the noise. He then observes the scene carefully. Kejong notices that vital points aren't Kim Yang's style and wonders if Han Maru was with her. He turns to leave, stating that they will go to Busan, but his subordinate asks if they shouldn't capture the 2 first. Kong explains with a smile that if the Charlotte group falls, he'll have nowhere to run and will end up in Busan anyway. He then declares that he'll see Hamaru and Busan. In the World Construction Building, a man walks with his subordinates. Vice President Matawang comments that he was craving some hot Busan soup and that everything worked out. He then orders everyone to hurry to Busan to finish off Shim Uniong have a bowl of soup. A man tells his subordinates that they can't fall behind the other affiliates. President Call then declares that they will be the ones to capture Shim Yan. In a military truck, someone comments that he heard the other affiliates are also heading to Busan. Inside the vehicle, Kim Soo-haen puts something on his neck. He informs his men that its use is a direct order from the chairman. With a smile, Soo-haen concludes that they need to finish them all. Meanwhile, firefighters are battling a blaze at the residential building. One of them prepares to go in as soon as the fire is under control, questioning the number of accidents in the neighborhood. The flames consume one of the apartment windows. Inside, Lee Kaeyoung is lying amidst the fire. He moves through the wreckage and complains about another explosion. Then the cell phone in his hand starts to ring. Lee Kaeyoung answers the call and confirms to Executive Choi that he's alive. On the other end of the line, he's ordered to work overtime and go to Busan immediately. He then lights up, complaining that he planned to take half the day off tomorrow. He decides that first can lead to write his resignation letter. With his arm and foot in casts, Kim So walks over and comments on the number of men who showed up. They all gather just to capture one guy from the Charlotte hotel. One of the men greets him and asks about the sample while others question his presence. He confirms the drug was good and asks for more, but is told it was just a sample to be used responsibly. Kim Soyeon then asks why everyone is standing outside instead of going in. The man explains they're discussing what to do since there are civilians on the premises. One of them suggests just going in, but another objects wanting to keep civilian casualties to a minimum and not pressure the chairwoman. Troy Kai-jong argues their orders override that concern, but he's told they shouldn't be reckless. From inside the hotel, Shim Yun watches the argument. She notes that they are not united at all. The so-called song line is made up of traditional gangsters, mercenaries, and athletes. Meanwhile, the jingle line tenaciously clawed their way up from the bottom. When manager Hong was alive, this conflict never surfaced. But now, divided, one man decides to move forward, telling everyone to go in and do whatever they want. Chief Park Tae-soo orders his men to eliminate anyone who gets in their way, and they all agree. One of the men points to the hotel entrance, getting Chief Park's attention. Inside, a henchman sees the various men in the lobby and asks if they should take them all out. But Park Tae-soo lights a cigarette and orders his men to ignore them and head up as their only target is Shim Yuno. He then stops for a moment, realizing something is off. Chief Park wonders what kind of hotel would only have male guests. He stands in the dimly lit lobby. Then he realizes it's a trap. Suddenly, the lights go out. The men shout to turn on their flashlights, warning that the enemy is here. In the darkness, one of the goons is struck down. Then a man with a sword charges at Chief Park's men. He remarks that the world executives aren't as tough as he imagined. Surrounded, his men confirm they defeated everyone there. Another man cleans his sword and warns them not to let their guard down because the war is just beginning. Outside, something starts to seep out from under the hotel doors. The group watches the scene. As one man wonders if Chief Park has fallen, Kroy Kijang comments that the number of competitors has just decreased. One of the men asks Vice Chief Ma why he wasn't with Chief Park's team. He replies that he had no reason to end up like that guy. Suddenly, Kim Saeum drives forward in a truck, yelling that he's going to end this. The vehicle crashes through the hotel entrance. Amidst the wreckage, he orders his men to move out and attack everyone. The men in the lobby retreat under the assault, realizing their disadvantage in an open space. Kim Suya then points upstairs and tells his soldiers to take down everyone they find. Watching the scene, Choi Kij-jong's group comments on how well he moves, even with a broken arm, and questions his use of chairwoman-used troops. A man says his goodbyes, stating he'll go through the underground and leave the rest to Director Choi, who says he'll go in through the front. Shim Yoonju approaches Cho Kijang and asks not to be left behind. He insists that with his help, getting inside will be much easier. Vanju proposes that while the others struggle, they can take a shortcut to capture Yunyang. From a room, Shim Yunyang observes that the enemy has the numbers but is divided and that the hotel's structure limits their power. She concludes that by exploiting their weaknesses and using her own strengths, there's still a chance to win, even at a disadvantage. She turns and tells Hamaru not to worry too much about this war. He adjusts his glasses and says it's a great plan, as expected from the successor to the Charlotte. Hamaru lifts his glasses and asks what her name was again. The scene then shifts to the entrance of an underground parking garage. Inside, Vice Chief Matt tells his men to get rid of the Charlotte's men and find Hamaru. He comments that it would be a big problem if the others got in first, but Man notices that no one is around and wonders if this is a trap like the first floor. He stares at the suspiciously open space and orders everyone to stay alert. Suddenly, a surprise attack begins in the midst of his men. A car speeds toward the group who try to dodge the vehicle. From another car, a man orders over the radio not to hesitate. Then a group of men with clubs charges forward. The two sides clash and one of Ma's henchmen asks where they came from. Standing in front of a car, a man with a sword states that force won't solve this. He then places a hand on the hilt of his blade. He raises it, saying he was planning to warm up before fighting Hamaru. His weapon then clashes with another blade. He slams his opponent's blade against a car, saying he's going to lose interest. With the car destroyed, the man praises the quality of his own sword. He then shows off the blade and asks if the other guy saw that. Men shout that Madong is heading up and they need to stop him, but he just asks if they don't think he's cool. He stares down one of his opponents, saying that when someone asks a question. Then he lunges forward with his weapon drawn, demanding an answer. Elsewhere, a group is heading up the stairs as their leader says the hotel has 16 floors and that he saw a staff floor in the guide. He claims Shim Yunyang must be on the 12th floor, but just as he mentions they're on the 11th, he's hit by an attack. The other men realize there's a sniper and take cover. The group's new leader tries to locate the threat down the hallway. He uses his phone's camera to look from a distance and spots a silhouette. The sniper is Kim Yang in position with her rifle. Back in the parking garage, Mate Wang stands before an elevator, wondering which floor he'll find Hamaru on. He deduces there wouldn't be many forces on the front lines as the elevator panel shows the second basement level. He concludes most of them must be with Shim Uniong and decides to head to the top floor first, just as the elevator door opens, but he looks inside and stops in surprise. The figure with his face in shadow steps out of the elevator. It's Hamaru who stares back at him. Matawang then breaks into a grin and identifies him. Hamaru, along with Kim Yang and security chief boss, steps out of the elevator. He's identified as the one who supposedly defeated Director Hong. In a meeting room, a man greets him and confirms his name. He then introduces himself as Takanaka Shori, the president of Do Ranch. Hamaru reacts upon hearing the ranch's name. He remembers Do Ranch as the place he destroyed back in Japan. He suggests they forget the past as he heard they decided to be on the same side, but Takanaka moves towards him from under the table. He questions the meaning of this. Hamaru, holding a pen, asks if he came to challenge him. Takanaka stares him down as he grips the pen tightly. He then invites him to strike if that's his will. A voice interrupts, telling them to stop. Shim Uniong enters the room and states that their common enemy is World. In the parking lot, Mel Wung wields his sword, cursing Hamaru. He then shouts about how much he wants to fight. Mate Wung charges with his sword, yelling for him to fall, but Hamaru dodges the blow. He then questions when they've ever met before. Hamaru steps back, surprised that he isn't in a position to block him. He then notices something in his opponent's hand. Mate Wung reveals he used the sword's sheath and questions if a trick like that would work on him. Hamaru calls him a coward, just as expected from someone who betrayed his own benefactor. He then charges again, but Hamaru dodges his attacks. Mata Wung's strikes are clean, fast, and controlled. He isn't just brandishing his sword for show. Mong is a true swordsman. With a knife in hand, Hamaru stops and asks why he did that. Maedong grips his sword, stating that Jono adored him. He then screams, asking why he did it. The scene then shifts to a pigsty. In a memory, Hong Jono reigned like a king. He remembers being just a pig in a cage under another's control. That seemed to be his destiny forever. But Jono saved him from that hell. He then tells the men to go and become the chairwoman's pigs. When Cho Kai-jong suggests he return to headquarters, Juno replies that he'll raise new pigs right there. Thus, Mel Wung's skills were recognized and he was promoted to vice president. But Juno remained as king and the idol he aspired to surpass. He attacks again, demanding to know why Hamaru murdered Juno. Hamaru blocks the strike as Mao Wung screams for an answer. In the hallway, the group's leader identifies Kim Yang through his phone's screen. She regrets that it isn't Hamaru. An object is thrown in her direction, but she says that this isn't bad either. Her eyes widen in surprise. A smoke bomb lands at her feet and activates. Engulfed in smoke, she complains she can't see anything. A man charges with a knife through the smoke, heading for Kim Yang. He blocks her rifle and greets her, saying he heard the news. He then accuses her of betraying World and switch into Charlotte's side. The man grabs her and asks how much they gave her to switch sides. He then pulls out a gun and offers to triple whatever she received. He invites her to work with him, but Kim Yang deflects the gun, saying it's no use trying that here. She then states that she won't work for a guy like him. He says it's a waste and that she leaves him no choice. He moves in, saying he needs to send her to her comrades from Gashi. But Kim Yang blocks his knife with another, questioning the mention of Gashuan. She asks how he knows about that and he reveals he sent his men there. Kim Yang then punches him in the face. She steps on him and asks if the men in suits at Goshen were his men. She prepares to strike again and asks if he gave the instructions. Then she attacks him and screams, questioning if he also sent them after the others. The man on the ground asks why they were so important and what it mattered. He then gets up and states it was his job and that anyone who gets in the way will fall. Kim Yang glares at him, furious. She then warns him that he won't get off easy today. Meanwhile, in the other fight, Hamaru shields himself from the debris and comments on the mess. He needs to move a lot to dodge Mate Wung's long sword, even if he tries to aim for the moment right after the strike. It's not easy due to his opponent's skill in handling the weapon. He's a monster of multi-dimensional skills, making it hard to find his weak spot. Hamaru compares him to Director Hong, while Mate Wung questions if that's all he learned from Juno. Then Hamaru realizes there's only one way. Just like in his fight with Director Hong, he won't dodge. Instead, he'll face him head-on. Matawang is surprised and calls him a brat. He then manages to wound his opponent's arm. Hamaru pulls the knife from Mate Wung's arm. He questions why Mong keeps mentioning the old man and asks if he liked him that much. Then Hamaru says he'll meet the same fate. Mate Wung rips his own clothing and praises his opponent's spirit. He ties the fabric to his sword, saying that Director Hong's killer shouldn't have at least this much resolve. Then he challenges him, stating he will defeat him with a single blow. Mate Wang questions if he can fight with that blade, but Hamaru says he'll be fine. He then claims that it's more than enough to finish him. Inside the Charlotte Hotel, a man is struck hard in the face. Amidst defeated opponents, one of the attackers recoils from the impact of a blow. Someone then calls out for Director Choi and he turns to see who it is. Shim Yunju appears in a hallway and calls out to him, telling him to come over. With a smile, he tells them to leave the small fry behind and hurry because this is a shortcut. Using his family's VIP card, he reactivates a stopped elevator, saying they can use this one. Banju then turns to Cho Kong and asks if things weren't much easier thanks to him. Elsewhere, a smoke grenade rolls across the floor. A man asks Yuden why the people from the Goshen were so important to her and when it even mattered. He draws a knife, stating it was just a job and that anyone who gets in his way will be defeated. DNE calls out to him. She swears he'll pay for what he's done. The two charge at each other, and the man finds it unbelievable she's taking this so seriously just because he killed a few civilians. She blocks his attack and asks if he thinks it's funny that he killed her family. Outraged, Yuden asks if he's laughing as she attacks him with the knife. The man answers yes and asks her if she's never killed civilians, and as he attacks her, he asks how those people could possibly be her family. She dodges his blow, grabbing the arm, wielding the knife. DNE then declares that to her they were like family and lands a punch to his face. He asks if she's really that upset over it. Then he lunges, saying he'll send her to join them, but she blocks the blow and hits him in the stomach. The man recoils from the impact of the punch. Next, Yuden reverses the grip on her knife and strikes him in the face. She then tells him to go and apologize to them. Desperate, he claims he only did it because he was forced and that he didn't want to kill them. He kneels, begging for mercy, saying he was wrong and that he has a family too. A memory shows a happy Dane sharing a meal with the people from the Jishuan. Yuden lets out a sigh. She turns and tells the man to get lost, and he thanks her, promising to never forget this. Suddenly, the man turns around. He grabs the gun from the floor, swearing that even if he dies, he'll never forget. But DNE points her gun at him, telling him not to forget this when he's dead. The man pleads, saying he has a family just like her. She then repeats his line, "Anyone who gets in the way of my work," he goes down as she attacks. In another hallway, a wounded man faces Hamaru, panting. He admits he can't believe how skilled his opponent is and declares that now he understands why Jono adored him. The man then wonders if he's going to die here. A smile forms on his face. He then says it doesn't seem so bad. And holding a sword, he states that he's having a lot of fun, but it's time to end this, and with one last effort, he charges forward to end it all. Hamaru faces him with a steady gaze. He dodges the sword strike that hits the floor and moves past his opponent, now positioned behind him. Maru glances to the side with determination. The man looks back at him over his shoulder with a final smile. A decisive blow lands. Hamaru picks up the sword from the floor and says he'll put it to good use. He rests the blade on him, recalling his promise to send him to his old man. Then he pulls the sword free and tells him to send his regards. Chief Park arrives, calling out to him and saying he's relieved he's safe. Maru asks if he took care of everything, but Park reports that he can't find Director Choi anywhere. He continues, explaining that he called upstairs and they haven't seen him either. Hamaru then realizes that Croy is in the elevator and concludes that this is a huge problem. Hamaru then realizes that Shim Yuniang is in danger. On another floor, Yuden readies her weapon while on the phone, saying she's on the floor below the president's office. She asks if they want her to move up quickly, but reports that the other important targets have already been eliminated. DNE then adds that she thinks it will still take a while. Kim Soo-yeon, standing behind her, states that there's still one important target left. Inside an elevator, Shim Yunju asks Crow what he thought and if things weren't much easier thanks to him. He continues saying he was a great help in capturing Yunyang and that Crow is his witness. Troy Jong simply replies that he will report the details to the president. Benji reminds him that they can't let Hamaru get to Yunyang this time and then asks since Haru is no match for him anyway, right? When the doors open, he points and announces that President Yunyang's room is right there. He suggests they take care of Yunyang first, and then a man sitting in a chair in the hallway asks if they arrived. Hamaru stands up and comments that they got there fast. Shim Yunju stares at him and asks what the hell Manager Lee is doing there and if he's a VIP too. Cho Kajung questions what he just heard. With a sword in hand, Ham Maru comments that they came straight to Buin. Shim Yunju scolds him, questioning his audacity for speaking to Director Choi like that, and asking if he plans to betray World to side with Charlotte. With his hand on the hilt of his sword, Ham Maru confirms that's exactly his plan and that he will eliminate them to join Charlotte. He then calls out for Director Choi and draws his sword in a swift motion. Elsewhere, a man with a sword in hand challenges Kijang to a confrontation. Cho Kijang stares at him in silence. A wide grin spreads across his face as he says he's always wondered just how good his opponent's skills were, and then he lunges to attack. The man tells him to shut up and fight. A flashback begins showing that the start was the same as always. He was a new employee at a company that exploited its workers. Even at 4 in the morning, his superior told him they were having a company dinner and no one was going home. He toughed it out, and before he knew it was promoted to manager, but the environment was still the same. After an explosion at the workplace, he continued working overtime without receiving treatment. Ti Chiang was framed for something he didn't do, nearly lost his life, and wondered why he had to work overtime again. He then wonders if this isn't a bit too much. A colleague lights a cigarette for him. He calls the man Hungam and says the situation is the man asks him what he'll do next and if he'll keep working for Director Choi, but he replies that he can't live like this. He states that this is a life or death decision where either he or the other man will end up gone. His colleague then offers him a card he received from the staff at Hotel Charlotte, suggesting he could call if he was thinking of switching jobs. He adds that since he's going to betray World anyway, it's not too late to switch to Charlotte's side. The business card belongs to Shin Yunyang. He closes his eyes, making his decision. In her office, Shim Yunyang says she hopes he had a good flight and that she's glad he arrived before World. The man replies that it's fine, and since there's no time, directly asks what she can offer him. She states that she understands perfectly what he means and can give him whatever he desires. He then says he doesn't want much, just a good work-life balance, and she asks if that's all. With a determined look, he adds that he wants to be the one to defeat Cho Kai-jang. Back in the fight, he firmly grips the hilt of his sword. Cho Kijang throws a punch which is blocked by his opponent's blade. He spins the sword's sheath with a quick movement. Then Hanmaru smacks Cho Kai-jang in the face with the hilt of the weapon. Cho Ki-jang stumbles back and comments that the rookie moves pretty well. Hamaru then lunges forward for another attack. His opponent notes that he uses the blade quickly and precisely, mixing in irregular movements. In an instant, Cho Ki-jang kicks him in the leg. The attack throws him off balance, forcing him to retreat. Cho Ki-jang then realizes there's a pattern to the attack. A straight slash immediately followed by a kick, but Hamaru recovers and hits him with a punch to the face. Kong admits that even knowing the pattern, he can't dodge because of his speed. He concludes that he needs to keep his distance against the short and mid-range chain attacks. Hamaru taunts him, asking why he's just running away now that he's right in front of him. He then charges forward, yelling that this is a dead end for Cho Ki-jang. Ki-jang realizes that although he can read the patterns, the speed makes it very difficult to react, so he braces for Hamaru's imminent attack. Choi Jang says it was just as he thought while dodging Hamaru's attack. He then grabs his opponent's arm, stating that his patterns are too obvious. With a firm grip, he twists Hamaru's wrist and violently throws him down the hall. Hamaru spits from the force of the impact. He falls to the ground, and Choi Ki-jang comments that his fast moves were great, but it was hard to keep up with his speed. With difficulty, Hamaru leans on his sword as his opponent explains that if it's hard to react, he just needs to predict and dodge. Chakan then moves forward, declaring that he will now pay the price for his betrayal. He tells Hamaru that he was a good subordinate. Then Choi Kajang smashes the floor with his hand and prepares for the final attack. Suddenly, he turns to the side. Kim Yang lands in the hallway, pinning down Shim Yamju. Choi Kijang realizes that if Kim Yang is at the hotel, Amaro must be too, but then reconsiders the situation. He understands that someone threw her there, and a man approaches, asking Yang how far she intends to run. Kim So suggests injuring Kim Yang's leg so she can't escape, but is scolded for using too much force. Supporting a wounded man, she complains that she was already having trouble with Director Choi and now he shows up. Then she explains that she found out the man she defeated was the killer of her Gashian family and apologizes for the misunderstanding. The injured man says that besides that, Right now they should be thinking about how they'll face these monsters. He laments having to face Director Choi while injured, but Suyin retorts that he's in better shape than the man who has a broken leg. Someone reflects that today is going to be a tough day and that they're going through a lot of trouble because of that colleague. Then the elevator doors in front of them begin to open. Hamaru steps out of the elevator accompanied by Chief Park. With a smile, Kim Suji celebrates that today he gets to meet not only that traitor Yang but also that Hamaru, and then he charges forward to attack. He curses at him as he closes in to strike a blow. Hamaru just tells him to stop staring with that stupid look on his face. With a single swing of his sword, he strikes his arms. The blow is finished with a precise movement. Hamaru declares that's one down. With a wide grin, Cho Kong stares at him. Then he gets ready for the next one. One of the men shouts into the radio that Director Choi has gone to the 12th floor and orders everyone to head there. He warns them how to split up so they won't be picked off one by one, but when they open the doors, they're met by 4 armed men. The group is quickly neutralized and the leader realizes they're on the wrong floor. In the stairwell, another team is ordered to hurry up and breach the 12th floor. The team leader asks if they're sure this is the right floor and his subordinate confirms. With the order to move, he yells for them to advance without hesitation to capture Shim Yan. Suddenly, the leader is struck hard. Then Takanaka Yoshinori attacks him with his katana. One of the men recognizes him as someone from Do Livestock. Desperate, he screams that they're on the wrong floor again as his men are attacked. The man takes in the situation around him. In another hallway, a minigun is revealed with a message for the intruders. Kai Cho, Kim Dong-ho, and Min Ching-sik then give the order to finish them all. Meanwhile, chaos erupts in the hotel's stairwells. A man despairs, wondering since when the floor signs have been switched. In her office, Shim Yuning states that everything is going according to plan. She explains that World presents itself as a powerful organization. But on closer inspection, there are cracks, and those cracks are their performance as they made the worst possible decision by prioritizing their own goals. For them, this was the best-case scenario, creating the perfect chance to take them down one by one. The plan was to eliminate World's factions one at a time by luring them inside the hotel and then neutralize them once and for all, as this was the plan from the very beginning. Yuniong adds that the advice from Maru's friend was crucial to the operation's success. Kim Kazun admits that tampering with the signs is a cheap trick, but a ridiculously effective strategy amidst the chaos. But Shimuno mourns they can't let their guard down yet as World's executives are strong enough to turn the tables. Back in the fight, Hamaru reflects that after his first defeat, he thought about it incessantly. He wondered how he could possibly defeat that bastard. The difference between them was at least 2 weight classes, and even with a blade against an unarmed opponent, he was completely mistaken to think he could make up for the disadvantage. Choi Kijan was an evasive expert in close-quarters combat. Hamaru knew that fighting the way he did before, there was no way to win, and so he prepared for a new confrontation. He had faced that man before, thinking a blade against an unarmed opponent would offset the difference. Normally, after swinging a heavy sword, you need a moment to readjust your stance. The mere recoil from the motion shakes the entire body. Trying to fight that recoil and attack again would cause devastating strain, but his opponent managed it as his physical abilities were simply on another level. The 2 blades then clash with force. Hamaru is thrown backward and Chang Kai-jong remarks that he thought he had something new up his sleeve. He claims that nothing has really changed, just the weapon. Still, he braces for the next attack, but now Hamaru can replicate his technique. Since his opponent doesn't know how many times he can repeat the move, he'll be forced on the defensive. And in the brief moment when he's the only one attacking, that's when he'll end the fight. Hamaru lunges forward, delivering a series of swift sword strikes. Cho Kijang braces himself against the wall to block the attack with his arm. Then Hamaru finishes the move with a decisive blow that hits his opponent. Choi Kijang's eye patch falls to the floor from the impact. He then raises his face, revealing an old scar. With a smirk, Hamaru asks if that wound was made by the old man. Cho Kai-jong advances furiously, shouting, "How dare he?" Hamaru braces for his imminent advance. With trembling hands, he realizes he's overused the sword and is at his limit. He just needs one more opportunity. Chakin keeps running toward him and he just needs to get into optimal range to strike. Hamaru then tightens his grip on the sword, determined to end it all. The 2 finally clash in one last confrontation. With a smile, Cho Kijang hates to admit it, but he states that if he hadn't stopped midway, he would have been finished. With a swift move, he prepares to counterattack. He explains that Hamaru was so focused on the decisive blow that he lost control and dropped the sword. With his arm injured, Hamaru laments his inexperience and the condition he's in. Chukai Jam approaches, saying he did well. Hamaru extends a trembling hand, needing just one more chance. He then clenches his fist with what little strength he has left. His opponent moves in to deliver the final blow, but Hamaru stops him, grabbing him by the chest. He then confirms that he got what he wanted. Choi Kijang simply hits him with a powerful punch. The impact of the blow lands squarely on Hanmaru. He falls to the ground and his opponent questions him, finding what he attempted to do ridiculous. Cho Kijang then asks if he really thought his own technique would work against him. Cho Jang advances on Hanmaru, calling him a fool. Suddenly, something hits Cho Kijang's hand and he reacts in surprise. Another hand moves quickly toward his chest and grabs him tightly. Cho Kijang angrily asks him who he thinks he is. He then reacts to the impact of a blow to his chest. The impact registers in his chest, and he wonders if it originates from the wound Hamaru caused. Kim So's hand tightens its grip. He then lifts Cho Kijang and slams him hard against the ground. Kim So stands panting while his opponent lies on the floor. Hamaru gets up and faces the man in front of him with a smile. Kim Sayin remarks that the last hit must have really